Will now call to order the June 9th Common Council. Due to the current COVID-19 emergency, persons attending the meetings will be required to comply with current restrictions related to social distancing. There'll be no general public comment at this meeting of the council. While in-person comment is permitted for individual agenda items, citizens may and are encouraged to consider submitting written comments. Those written public comments may be sent via email or mail addressed to the city manager's office, placed in the City Hall drop box, or sent by email to city manager's office prior to a council meeting. The city manager at citymgr@ci.oshkosh.wi.us, and written comments will be distributed to the council and made part of the public record of the meeting. So we are now called to order. Please call the roll.
Ford.
Here.
Allison Osby.
Here.
Krause.
Here.
Mugrower.
Here.
Erickson.
Here.
Peschel.
Here.
Palmieri.
Here.
Present 7.
Councilmember Ford will lead us in the invocation, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
We come together this evening to discuss the issues that confront our city. May we always seek the wisdom to do things that reflect our concern for the people whom we represent. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We next have a proclamation for Pride Month, June 2020. Whereas the city of Oshkosh and the state of Wisconsin scored 52 out of 100 on the 2019 Human Rights Campaign Municipal Equality Index. And whereas the city of Oshkosh recognizes the urgent work that must be done to create a more equitable and inclusive city for lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, intersex, asexual, the LGBTQIA+ communities. And whereas each resident of the city of Oshkosh plays a crucial role in creating an inclusive city, whereas the city of Oshkosh affirms and values residents who identify as LGBTQIA+, and whereas LGBTQIA+ residents contribute to the cultural, civic, and economic successes of the city of Oshkosh, now therefore I, Lori Palmieri, Mayor of the city of Oshkosh, do hereby declare June 2020 as Pride Month in the city of Oshkosh, and I urge all residents to reflect on the role they can play in creating a more equitable and inclusive city for LGBTQIA+ residents.
Thank you. My name is Eliza Farrow, and I have lived in Oshkosh my whole life. And I identify as non-binary and lesbian. And I would just like to thank you for the honor of receiving this proclamation. It's awesome that the city is recognizing the diversity of our community, and as a lifelong resident of Oshkosh, I'm appreciative of their commitment to making Oshkosh more inclusive. I'm wearing my 50th Stonewall anniversary shirt that I got at the Stonewall in last year when I visited New York. It's important for me and for all of us to remember that the Stonewall riot was started by queer and trans people of color, and to carry that forward as we think about Pride this year. We need to stand with our Black community members and allies always, but in this time especially. Black lives matter. Happy Pride.
So we're now at the point in the agenda where we consider consent agenda items. I'd like to query council about potentially going a little bit out of order and allowing Chief Stanley to give our COVID-19 update earlier in the agenda.
No problem. Yep.
Yes?
Yes.
All right. Chief Stanley?
Thank you, Madam Mayor and members of council. I know we've got a lot of important things to cover tonight, so I'll try to keep this brief. The first thing is how reassuring it is about our community to see everybody here wearing masks, socially distancing, trying to do the things that are recommended to keep us safe. I think we've done, as a community in Oshkosh, an exceptional job all along with that. So thank you to everybody for considering the public health emergency that we're under. That my report tonight is, not chock full of good news by any stretch of the imagination. As we've all seen in the past 3 weeks, that for Winnebago County and for Oshkosh, that our numbers have tripled since we've reopened. Which was somewhat to be expected and predictable, that we were able to keep our curve here locally very flat for a long time. But we're starting to see those numbers rise dramatically and in a concerning fashion. That, we've hit record milestones for number of cases reported, in these past few weeks, of going from the 20s and now into the 30s. Unfortunately, we're up to 7 deaths. All of those were in senior living facilities. So, again, predictable and understandable. But what is tremendously concerning is, we had been very proportionate to the rest of the state and the rest of the county, and we had been outside the top 10 municipalities in the state for quite a while. As you all know, we're the 7th largest municipality. We've jumped into the top 10. We haven't hit 7 yet, but we're rising with a bullet. And the numbers that are that are growing the fastest, the demographic on that is ages 20 to 29. So we're seeing an exponential growth in that category. That's the leading demographic in both the county and in the city. And as I said, we've kind of been balanced proportionally with the rest of the county, and we're seeing the numbers in the city well outdistance the numbers in the county. So that many of those cases are being attributed and traced back to either bars or parties and social events. So when everything reopened and everybody enjoyed more liberties, then we're starting to see spread throughout the community with that. So we would caution everybody that think about where it's being spread, and it's like I said, the bulk of those are we're seeing that we're able to trace right back to some type of social event. And one of the things in conversation with public health that they talked about was that we got to make good decisions for those around us, because most of those 20 to 29-year-olds, in that age group will probably be fine, and be healthy and not get terribly symptomatic. But who are they working with? What family do they have? What other vulnerable people do they associate with? We need to be all collectively mindful of that, so that we aren't spreading it to vulnerable people that will not fare well and may not survive. So I promised that I'd keep it brief, and I almost did. So if anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Otherwise, I'll let you move on.
Just one other thing, Madam Mayor. These numbers were starting to come in, a couple weeks ago, as we could see the trend going up. And we were fully prepared to reopen City Hall on yesterday. But when those numbers were rising as much as they were, we've been very successful with staff of being able to provide services to the community with our doors being closed. And I have a great deal of faith in the staff. And that was a motivation, as you know, that I'm going to keep City Hall closed through the July 4th holiday. That doesn't mean we're going to be reopening that following Monday. I'm hopeful that we will, but I don't want to commit ourselves to that. I think we need to keep looking at the numbers, and the numbers of the young people deeply concern me. And we've had daily discussions with Health Director Giron, and he's concerned about that because that's where community spread is starting. So we're just being cautious. So that's all I have.
I guess my question would be, so as I understand it, if we were looking at that Badger bounce back, that we went from whatever it was, 2 to 3 red stop signs, and on that level. And then I guess my other question is, while our numbers were going up, did I understand this correctly, that the percentage of hospitalizations were going down?
The last report, excuse me, the disaster over here. The last report that we had was the number of hospitalizations they thought were staying about the same. And we'll have a conference call every Wednesday. So tomorrow afternoon, we'll have a call with the hospitals so we can investigate further because the information we get from them is a week old. So now that those numbers have continued to go up, my opinion would be the hospitalizations are probably not going up a great deal at this time because of that demographic being 20 to 29, they're having milder symptoms, or the ones that are older and not faring well are already in a healthcare facility. So many of them are in respite care and end up in hospice, so they're not making that transition to the hospital as frequently.
Thank you for that update. Councilmember Mugarauer.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. City Manager Roloff, I know we're having a little tech issue, so I'm not able to access it and answer my own question, but do we have a one-stop shop for the people of Oshkosh in terms of, on our website that they can click on that they know all the facilities' statuses? Like, for example, senior center, parks, museum, library. We've got different facilities that are going to have different things. The police station has opened back up for certain things. City Hall, not yet. Is there a one-stop shop, or if not, can we get one in terms of that way people can just click one link and find out exactly what's open and what restrictions are in place, the zoo, places like that. I think it'd be helpful. I mean,
Yeah.
we've got a lot of great information out there. The departments are doing fantastic jobs getting it out. A clearinghouse, a one-stop shop might be just, an extra step.
Yeah, I know we're having issues tonight, so I agree with you. We'll look for those and
Appreciate it.
get that out there.
Thank you.
Thank you for the feedback.
All
Thank
right.
you, Chief.
So our next item is the consent agenda. And Pam, do we have any registered comments on consent agenda items?
No, we do not.
All right, back to council for motion and a second.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. Councilmember Mugarauer.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. If Finance Director Van Gompel wouldn't mind coming up and giving us some good news this evening regarding some of our bond issuances. It'd be nice to hear that good news.
Yeah, on your desk this evening is a handout that was actually prepared by Ellers. And just want to walk through that real quick. And the consent agenda is 3 resolutions. 2020 Series A, which is for general obligation bonds. 2020 B, which is general obligation notes. And 2020 C, which is stormwater utility revenue bonds. For the 2020 A bonds, some of that's new money and some of that's refinancing. The actual bid came in at 1.69%, which is really good. The notes are even better at 1.33%. And then the stormwater revenue bonds were at 2.16. With the general obligation bonds, we were refinancing debt that was issued in 2011. When we did our calculations and estimates, we were estimating a savings of about $615,000. With the interest rates, we're going to have savings close to $850,000. So that's really good news for the taxpayers in the city of Oshkosh. Some of that is future levy, some of that's savings in TID districts. So really excited about that. I'm going to ask Todd just to talk about the market real quick for you so he can give you some of those.
Sure, thanks, Russ. And by way of history, we also showed the last 5 years in the lower left-hand corner. And The lowest rates we had prior to today within the past 5 years were in 2016. And in the case of the GO bonds, we're still 0.7% less than we were back in 2016, which was an extraordinarily low interest rate market. We're 0.3% lower on the GO notes than 2016, and about 0.6% on the stormwater revenue bonds. And the graphic on the back is just a representation of what the interest rate would be that a bondholder would receive if you're holding a bond that matures in 20 years. And you can see over the last 5 years, if you look at the far right, that's where we're at today, and that just graphically shows how far interest rates have come down. The other interesting thing is on that far right, you'll see we've got a line that goes up and down several times pretty rapidly, and that was just that period of turbulence right after we saw the equities markets start to take a dive. So 6 weeks ago, 8 weeks ago was not a good time to sell bonds. Right now is obviously a great time to sell bonds.
Mayor. If you-
Councilmember McGraw.
Thank you, Mayor. If you wouldn't mind, I can take some educated guesses on some of the factors, but if you wouldn't mind giving us, some of the factors that drove those interest rates lower. Obviously, we've got market conditions, but have any of the steps we've been taking helped? Did, the review from Moody's and those types of aspects?
I mean, your rating on the general obligation at AA3 has not changed, nor has the stormwater rating at A1. I think if you read a report that was issued as compared to a report 3 years ago or 5 years ago, what you'll see is that the city's debt burden has started to come down appreciably. You've obviously had economic growth. So from a qualitative standpoint, there's certainly a much more positive picture than we have had in the past. So everything is trending in the right direction. So while there wasn't a rating change, certainly investors are looking at those reports, and it gives them a feeling of confidence in investing in Oshkosh bonds. So that's certainly a factor, but overwhelmingly it's primarily the market conditions, and that's why we bid these competitively, so that just like with a public works contract, you have the assurance that you got the best deal available on any given day in the market.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Any others? All right, please take the roll. I'm sorry, was there another consent agenda
Sorry,
item?
I just thought you meant on this. I don't think so. No.
Okay,
Sorry.
all right, please take the roll on consent.
Ford.
Aye.
Allison Osby.
Aye.
Krause.
Aye.
Mugrower.
Aye.
Erickson.
Aye.
Peschel.
Aye.
Palmieri.
Aye.
Carried 7.
All right, we had no items removed from the consent agenda, so we'll move on to new ordinances. The first item, there will be no anticipated formal action taken on the item this evening. Ordinance 20-254. Did we have anyone registered for this item?
Yes, we do. Greg Cost, 1120 Platt Road.
Over this side, please. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm here on behalf of Equus Property Group to answer any questions you might have regarding the proposal.
This is the former, is it Newman House?
Yeah, I mean, originally it was built, it's been rebuilt a couple times, but originally it was a convent for the parish. Then it was a housing for families, and then most recently it's been housing primarily for students through the Newman Center.
And it's your intention to make these market rate. So what kind of rents is market rate for you?
Yeah, it's still going to be primarily student housing, just given its location and the target audience, but certainly we don't restrict anybody from leasing the property. It's really just kind of what the current market rents are for similar type units. I don't have those.
So do you have an example of what that is?
There's a mixture of 1, 2, and 3 bedroom units in the property. Off the top of my head, I'd be guessing, and I'd probably be off. But again, it's just really what the other units that are similar in size, are getting from a price standpoint. I mean, market always drives those things.
So what are the current rents there?
We never had access to those. That was a different, it isn't set up like a normal apartment property where there's leases in place. They had a different type of an agreement with the residents that were there. There will be a couple of residents that would like to remain, which we'll be trying to accommodate, but it's been run as a Newman House and as a nonprofit, so it's been run kind of differently than.
So will those current residents be able to remain there?
Most of them have already left. I think there's one staying for the summer, and then I think there's a couple that would like to consider staying, but they're not sure if they want to stay yet or not. It's up to
Would they, I guess my question is, would they be able to afford to?
Yeah, I don't think, from a per-person standpoint, I don't think we'll be much different than where they were. It's just, again, they rented by the bedroom, and however they did that, we just rent it like an apartment building. So you could rent the 1, 2, or 3 bedroom unit, and we don't charge on a per-person basis like that.
Do other council members have anything? Councilmember Erickson.
Thank you. For people who might be watching from home, could you talk through maybe any improvements that you're looking to do? In particular, I'm just wondering if you're looking at providing any accessible units.
We're really not looking to make any additional changes to the property. It was renovated in the early 1990s. It was a complete renovation at that point, so it's consistent with other buildings, even though it looks, from the earlier part of the last century. The interior is from 1992 or 3, I believe. So it is certainly has whatever improvements were required at that point in time.
So my apologies, I did not read the full item. This is for approving a zone change from institutional with a university transition overlay to urban mixed use with a university transition overlay for a portion of the property located at 471 High Avenue. Plan Commission did recommend approval on this. So, Councilmember Mugrauer, you had something else?
I did, yes. Thanks, Madam Mayor. Really, the only reason you came before Plan Commission, that you get to come before us, is because it's a zone change. The actual use of the property isn't changing, except for the ownership is. And if it wasn't for the university looking or the current owner looking to remove this from their holdings, you wouldn't be here, because it's now a tax exempt property. They don't pay property taxes because they're an institutional. You're coming to us to just change the zoning and put it back in the tax roll, and to put it in private hands to operate. So
Correct. Yeah.
That's the only reason that that this flowed this way.
Mm-hmm. Yep. All right. Please call the roll.
Appreciate. Nope. No
First
action tonight.
reading. Oh, sorry. I said there would be no action, and then I'm calling for action. All right.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. The next item on the agenda is Ordinance 20-255, Create Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee. I believe the city manager would like to just give a brief staff history on this item. As many of you know, this has been in the works for some time, and it was actually scheduled to be on the agenda after following the council meeting's organizational meeting in April. And then we had COVID and things changed. So that's okay. It's okay for us to have this now. It's been in the works for some time. And Mr. Roloff, would you like to give a little history?
I'd be happy to, Madam Mayor. Thank you. I provided council with a copy of a July 2016 report that was directed by council back then. And it's just a little bit of history. Back in 2015, towards the end of the budget process for the 2016 budget, council member Ben Stepanek had raised the issue of creating a diversity coordinator position. It didn't make it in the budget due to the lateness in the budget process, but the council did direct me to conduct a study of creating a diversity coordinator position. And as a result of that was the report that I provided you in your packet tonight. There were multiple options that were presented to council, one of which included the creation of a diversity and inclusion committee. And that was essentially what council had directed me to do. In the process of that, the next goal the council gave for me was finding a way to reduce the number of boards and commissions after they said, let's do a new committee. So they said, well, let's wait until we get those committees reduced. The council did, as of last year, reduce, got rid of 2 commissions by consolidating some. So then after Mayor Palmieri took office, we had the discussion about getting this back on the front burner. So the mayor and I have been working for the past few months on getting this done. I had a draft, and then we had a computer virus, which made it inaccessible. So we finally had our goal of getting it by the organizational meeting. So we're a little late with that, but I think it's still, it demonstrates that this has been a long time coming. There are many things in that report that I'd encourage you to look at, but the reality is the discussion of a committee was to have a more citizen-based approach to discuss diversity and inclusion, and it was felt that at that time, and I think because it's on the agenda tonight, is that we still have a lot of work to do regarding diversity and inclusion, and a citizens committee is a good first step to have that discussion. A lot of things are in there. I encourage you to look at it. Even back then, we had included a good number of people, and I think there's a slide towards the back of the report. Certainly, I spoke with people at the university because the university is typically very progressive on these types of issues, and the university's done a lot regarding diversity and inclusion. But I also spoke with the Appleton Diversity Coordinator. I did a lot of research from a group called GARE, which is Governmental Alliance on Racial Equity, which is a great resource. And I know several council members have commented to me that they've looked at that site. And I think there's so much more to that in terms of equity and inclusion. So there's still a lot of things that are very relevant today that we should be looking at. And I think that given the events of the past few weeks, I think maybe argued it's overdue, but it's certainly ready to go. And I think the mayor has done a lot of work herself to gain public input as well. And I'll turn it over to you, Madam Mayor, to, when we started drafting this, you began some outreach efforts of your own.
Well, let me just say, first of all, this wasn't just an idea that came out of City Hall. This was initiated, and I've spoken with former council member Ben Stepanek about this. This was not initiated by us. This was the people's request. And I just want to thank those people in the original discussions for bringing that to council. And I want to say that, the more recent input that I took this listening session out in the community over the last year, specifically was to ask the question, what do you want to see in a diversity, equity, and inclusion committee? Or, I'm sorry, diversity and inclusion. Because what happened is, out of those conversations, people said, we want to talk about equity in that place also. So that shifted this a little bit in scope and broadened it, and that was really valuable information. So I just want to thank those folks that gave, from our Hmong community, from our African American community, the Hispanic community, the LGBTQIA, the National Alliance for Mental Illness, the school district, the university, young people, old people. It really was an honor for me to hear from those groups and give them the option of shaping this. And thanks to staff for the going in depth with many of these pieces, and thanks to former council members who gave that direction to staff. So that's pretty much the background on this. It's very timely, although it may have needed to come sooner. I think it's very timely considering the other issues that are before us. So back to council for motion and a second.
Nope.
Public comment?
Public comment registration. We should have a list of people already registered to speak on this.
Yes,
Pam,
we do.
We do?
Yes, we do.
Do you want to call the first 3 names and then they can line up, and as they exit, then the other ones come in? Is that my understanding?
Certainly. Alicia Johnson, Mashabi Sabula, Aaron Wojciechowski.
All right, good evening, everyone. I want to thank you for bringing this agenda item forward. So my name is Alicia Johnson, and my pronouns are she, her, and hers. I am a resident and property owner within the city of Oshkosh, and I'm also employed within the city. So I wrote to council to submit 1,417 signatures in support of the Oshkosh City Council Agenda Item 29 to create a Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee. The number of individuals supporting this petition that I started demonstrates the need for the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee to become a long overdue reality. While not every signee is a resident of Oshkosh, those who signed include students who live in Oshkosh at least 9 months of the year, and individuals who have beloved family and friends residing in Oshkosh. Signees also include individuals who are past residents of Oshkosh, but moved away as a result of the discrimination or harassment they experienced in the city of Oshkosh on the basis of their race, gender identity, or sexual orientation. It is important for Oshkosh city leaders to recognize that we live in a globalized world, and the decisions we make to support or not support Oshkosh residents of all identities has a ripple effect on other parts of the country and of the world. In addition to signing the petition, several individuals added comments to describe why they chose to sign the petition. And as the creator of the petition, I feel like it's important to bring their voices in. Rachel McKay said, "Black Lives Matter, and this is how I can help do my part to create positive change in the world for them starting in my own community." Bob Knutson said, "I'm signing because I would like to be on this committee to be a perspective of knowing economic challenges for decades." Jacqueline Belter said, "Knowledge creates empathy, empathy creates peace and tolerance." Jonathan Hetzel said, "I'm signing because Oshkosh has the opportunity to either embrace diversity, equity, and inclusion and make it a reality in our community, or risk showing itself as one fractured by inequity and racial prejudice. The latter is the reality not just of Oshkosh or Wisconsin, it is the truth exposed by racial atrocities, protests over police brutality, and civil unrest all around the country today. Oshkosh must show leadership in helping our community to proactively address disparities of race, ethnicity, gender, and income or wealth." Chantel Jordan Owen said, "I believe this is the right way." Sarah Dennehy said, "Come on, Oshkosh, let's build on the amazing community we have." Jennifer Kiss said, "Diversity and inclusion are important." Gabby Newman indicated that she's signing because this sort of committee is exactly what our community needs. Only great things come from starting these initiatives. And Sandra Magnuson said, "We are all God's children." So on behalf of every individual who signed the petition, I urge the Oshkosh City Council to approve Ordinance 20-255 and create the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee. With gratitude, Alicia. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next registered speaker. Moshe.
Yes, good evening,
Mr.
Council.
Sabula, thank you.
Yes, good evening, everybody. I should say, first of all, blessings to all of you. I'm a resident of this beautiful city of Oshkosh since 2007 or 8. And having lived in this town, I've had so many challenges that I had to struggle to overcome. But above all those, it reminds me of such a time when I lived in the majority. And in such a time when I was in the majority, we had a few minorities with their own small issues or bigger issues, and each time the minorities came and presented their issues to the majority, most of the time they were never heard, because it's so difficult to go through the majority if you're a minority. So, with those challenges of those people, made me realize sometimes we have to step back and listen to the voices of that group. And in Oshkosh, since I've been in this town, this agenda topic, like everyone has said, it's not the first time it has been brought to this house. It's been here before me and before others. We've had those allies that have fought back and forth and gave up on it. We did not give up. That sometimes we felt like disappointed and let down after talking to our leaders, and we felt like sometimes our leaders don't care or don't listen to us. But today, to hear the city manager say he did his homework, to listen to the people, to do some research, and to hear the mayor saying that she has had time to speak with the community, that makes me proud about the city that I live in. So to all of you guys, good job, and finally I'd say, a luta continua. The fight continues. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello.
Welcome.
Welcome. Thank you. My name is Aaron Wojciechowski. I am a resident of Oshkosh, have worked in Oshkosh, or currently work in Oshkosh, and graduated from UW Oshkosh, and for the last 4 years I've had the esteemed opportunity to represent one of the most diverse districts in Winnebago County, being University of Wisconsin-Oshkosh District. First, I want to say thank you so much for the Pride Month proclamation. I think it's a huge step, and you might not realize how important it was or the impact that it will have, but I think it will have a huge impact, and for me personally, I thank you for that. But I am here to speak in support of creating the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Committee. I've spoken with a number of you, especially the mayor, on the need to create this committee and to get the ball rolling on a lot of these issues that I've seen, a lack of progress being made on. Being on the county board, I was one of the few, if not the only, openly gay person on that board, and just having that representation meant a lot to a lot of people. And I remember my first term on that board getting an email from a young man who didn't live in my district, lived in Oshkosh, but thanked me for being on that and being, that voice for, gay people, whether they're open or not open or in the closet, and just being able to have that voice and representation in our government, in our decision-making places, is incredibly impactful and makes a big difference. So I'm really hoping that we can make progress on this committee, get it created immediately. I'd love to serve on it, or just love to be there to help get some of these issues rolling. Yeah, I just want to say thank you again. I hope we can get this going, and I think we're moving in the right direction. So thank you so much for having me in. Thank you.
Thank you.
Warren Bergman.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Warren Bergman. Since retiring from full-time teaching in 2013, I have worked as a substitute teacher here in the Oshkosh School District. I've had the wonderful opportunity of teaching students in nearly every school of the district, which is what a sub does. And I've had the opportunity to see the face of Oshkosh change for the better. Oshkosh is getting more beautiful, Oshkosh is getting more diverse, and therefore Oshkosh is getting wealthier in the best sense of that word. But as I suspect happens in many American cities, the institutions, the organizations, the businesses of the city need to catch up with the community. And I think that's central to what we're talking about. I'm on the board of the Oshkosh Food Co-op, which most of you know is, if everything goes well, is set to open up its doors in a little more than a year. And we are working very hard to help our co-op, our membership, and our leadership better reflect the diversity of the community. We're not there yet, but we're working hard on it. We recognize the importance of that. I bring that up because how much more important would it be for our city government to do the same? I strongly urge passing this ordinance to develop the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
That is all that we have signed up. I don't know if you wanted to note in your folder the documents that you received.
Yes. So that's all we have signed up for 20-255. So I have 5 pieces of correspondence that have been registered with the clerk that also speak to this item as well, and so those will be recorded.
Just just to make sure, I know that that's all you have registered. We have other people in the audience. I know we don't have many here, but there's more in the hallway too. We want to just offer a double check to make sure that nobody is being missed on the opportunity to speak this evening. I think there's at least one hand back there who would.
Are you
would
here
like
to speak to the diversity, equity, inclusion?
Well, while we do that,
30.
Okay, that's the next item after this one. Okay, I understand. Okay.
just to make
So
sure.
you're saying check in the
I
hallway?
think
Okay.
Assistant City Manager
Yes.
Fitzpatrick is taking a look just to make sure right now.
All right. And one of those, actually, one of those 5 items is the petition that Ms. Johnson referenced earlier. So there were 4 additional pieces of correspondence that related to this item that the folks wanted registered on the record. Once we've confirmed the final number of speakers for this item, we'll bring it back to the council for motion and discussion. I'm sorry, unless that's a
We're good?
motion.
We're good.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Well, if there's a motion to waive the rules and adopt first reading.
You would be unable to. Yes. We're good.
Okay.
They checked. We're all good.
Okay, so back to council for motion in a second.
So moved.
Well, hold on. There
Well,
wasn't
hold-
anticipated action, so are you?
It's on first reading.
This is the first reading.
If
I
you-
believe that there was a council member who wanted to make a motion.
Mayor?
Suspend the rules. then.
Councilmember Krause.
I'd like to make a motion to waive the rules on ordinance 20-255 for discussion and vote tonight.
Second.
Discussion on waiving the rules and adopting on first reading. Councilmember Mugrauer.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I appreciate Councilmember, actually Deputy Mayor Krause's motion to waive the rules. An additional 2 weeks on this particular topic I don't think will profoundly impact the positiveness of this one. I think we're there already. I think it's an additional 2 weeks of just waiting for the formality of it isn't needed. I think we're there, and I'm more than supportive of taking a vote tonight to move this forward.
Councilmember Allison Asby.
I am as well, because I think the longer that it's out there, I know there was some social media communications that were going around, and a number of people were asking. It gave the illusion that either past council members or current were not in support of this, and that is absolutely 100% not true. It's certainly not past councils that I've been a part of, nor this council. So I agree with Mr. Mugrauer and Mr. Krause that we waive the ruling and adopt on the first reading.
Okay, let's take a vote on that.
Ford.
Aye.
Ellison Osby.
Aye.
Krause.
Aye.
Mugrower.
Aye.
Erickson.
Aye.
Peschel.
Aye.
Palmieri.
Aye.
Carried 7.
Okay, so now we'll bring it back as it is for a vote on the actual resolution. So we need a motion and a second.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
And discussion on the resolution as proposed. Councilmember Ford.
Would this be the correct point to offer an amendment?
Might I make a suggestion before you do so?
Please.
Maybe allow other discussion to take place before an amendment. That way we don't
Absolutely.
convolute the two a little bit, maybe.
Absolutely. That's fine.
I know we've talked about the amendment and fully support hearing it, but I think maybe just procedurally it might be better to
I
allow
appreciate
some other
the advice for the
discussion.
new guy. Thank you.
Anyone?
Who'd like to go?
I can kick it off.
Deputy Mayor Causey?
Thank you, Mayor. We've been working on this, and this has been in the works for a couple of years, and we're happy to finally get it to the table, even though we should have done it a long time ago. Oshkosh is a destination city, from moving from big cities to have a simpler life, or smaller cities to have more opportunity. Oshkosh is in the sweet spot. It's like, I heard, the 7th or 8th biggest city in the state, so people want to move here, but unfortunately, the city that we share isn't the same city everybody shares in views and opportunities. People always say that we want to be on the right side of history and do the right thing. This is our opportunity. Right now, it's our job as council and city leaders are to listen, take suggestions, put the right people at the table. And this is what this advisory committee is all about, to get people's voices in the forefront that have actually experienced these issues in their lives. This isn't the same city we all live in, and people need to have that voice, and this is the way we need to move forward in Oshkosh and look to the future for a brighter future for everybody. Thank you.
Councilmember Erickson?
Thank you. So like City Manager and Mayor Palmieri mentioned, this isn't solely a response to the murders of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, among, unfortunately, many others. But this is definitely showing the need for this. And I think as a city, we need to be committed to being actively anti-racist and actively improving equity in the city for all residents, but particularly those who haven't had a voice at the table for too long. So this is one step in the right direction, but this requires systematic change that we need to be committed to. Oh, thank you.
Councilmember Mugarauer?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think Councilmember Erickson said it right there. I think it's one step. Is it to some it's a small step, to some it's a big step, but it is a step nonetheless that we do need to take to start moving that needle, to having those uncomfortable conversations. So fully supportive of doing this. I want to thank the mayor for her leadership on this and the time and the effort to put this together, as well as I know the countless hour city staff worked on it as well. I know you've mentioned, it's long overdue, and so fully supportive of it, and I'm happy to see it tonight.
All right, Councilmember Ford?
Yes, I'd like to offer an amendment. It is the packet.
Councilmember Ford?
Oh, I didn't
Before
see
you make an amendment, may I say some words?
Councilmember Paschal, yes, please join us.
Thank you. First I want to acknowledge the steps that citizens of Oshkosh have had to take for years for this to get to the point that this is being heard by this body tonight. I really think that's the impetus of this, is that our community has had challenges getting this type of conversation to take place and to begin in our community. And we've had the right opportunity to have the right people, the right council members, the right community members who are all willing to invest their time and energy to give us their insight into creating this committee. And I think that's really important to acknowledge in our community, because our community isn't perfect, but people have been working for decades to get to something like this that actually qualifies for a real solid, compassionate step towards communication and goals of improving our community for people who are of different color, people who are different ethnicity, different backgrounds, and such. And so I think it's really important to fully acknowledge that this has been a several decade-long struggle to get to this point. And then I want to acknowledge that this is really step one. what happens after we approve this tonight begins to create the change that we hope to see in our community, the equity that we hope to create in our community for all people. I think it's really important that we be proud for those that have struggled to get us here to this point. So thank you for that.
And I would also add that, I could read the entire resolution. I will say that, the highlights we kind of covered in some of the history, but, some of the facts are that, our population is increasing, our demographics are changing. County data shows that. Our school district reports over 50 languages in the district. The Wisconsin Public Health Association passed a resolution in 2018 declaring that racism is a public health crisis in Wisconsin. That's a pretty important whereas. Our own city reporting of the analysis of impediments to fair housing choice in both 2013 and 2019 share language on issues such as race, ethnicity, and disability, and impediments related to those items. We've had some great leaders and great agencies and entities also weigh in on this, but it is the people amongst those communities that is anticipated to serve on this committee, to advise this council, to advise the city manager. And I believe that Councilmember Ford has some specifics on some of the tools to give that committee some power to be successful. Councilmember Ford.
Yeah, with that, I'd like to offer a series of amendments to add metrics, tools, and defined roles for the DEI committee. It was distributed to every council member as well as city staff in their packet.
Would you like to highlight those? And
I'm
just
happy
share
to.
some
Should
of those?
I wait till it's seconded, or should I explain everything now?
Yes, we do need a second.
Second.
Discussion.
All right. So first off, just to echo what everybody else said, I'm really proud of all of us for getting to this point. I'm proud of the individuals that were out there articulating their position at the sundial, and I'm proud of the police chief for going out there and listening to them. Thankful to the current council, former council, staff, and everyone who's worked on this to get to this day. So my goal of this amendment is to empower the committee to establish the problem and articulate solutions in the language of government. I think we've established the problem in the language of protest, which is fine, but government speaks a different language. We need to translate it into that language so that we can make progress. I want equity. The goal of these amendments is to make equity a true operational value. Now, we talk about social equity. It's not a radical idea. We're talking about fairness in the delivery of public services, ensuring that everybody owns that one share in their government and has an equal right to enjoy it. So specifically, what does this do? One, it ensures that consideration is given to the committee that it reflects the diversity of Oshkosh without putting specific quotas, but making sure that we have a committee that looks and feels like the city itself. It has the city and committee join the Nonprofit Government Alliance on Race and Equity. Core membership is about $1,000 a year. I worked with city staff. I know City Manager Roloff had mentioned this organization. It's a great organization that can help give this committee the resources it needs to actually take action. I'll note that this is a city membership and not an allocation to the committee itself. Concern was brought to me that we don't fund specific citizen committees, and that makes perfect sense. So this will be something that both the city and the committee will have the opportunity to benefit from. This also empowers staff to work with the committee to develop an equity training program. This is nothing new. I pulled out the budget request earlier this year, 2020. $20,000 was asked from the Human Resource Department that was specifically designed for diversity and inclusion programming in the city of Oshkosh. We want that to happen, and we want to make sure that the new committee has a voice in working with city staff to make that happen. 4, task the committee to work with staff to develop department-level equity performance measures. We don't have to reinvent the wheel here. A lot of this is going to be things that city staff are already doing, are already tracking. But this puts them all in one place, gives the Committee on Equity and Inclusion, and gives the Common Council and the city manager the ability to actually approve these metrics and put them in the budget so they are reported upon, and allows the committee itself to set goals that need to be approved by the council and city manager so that we can actually have measurable progress. We need to establish the problem so we can track the problem so we can address the problem. Now, I don't want this to be top-down. I'm quite aware of who I am and the experience I have and how that differs from many of the people that should be serving on this committee. So it certainly can't be top-down coming from me. But my hope that these changes will help the city staff, and the committee have the tools to find systemic solutions to what is ultimately a systemic problem. And I want to be really clear up here with all my fellow council members that whether you agree with these amendments or not, I don't doubt for a second your commitment to the concepts of equity and inclusion. And anybody listening at home, don't take argument, dissent, disagreement about these specific amendments as anything but people feeling there's a different way to get to this ultimate goal, which is a more inclusive, more equitable Oshkosh. Thank you.
Councilmember Ford, I have a question for you.
Yes.
So on these amendments, what were your thoughts about giving city manager authority to adapt or not adapt? I understand on some of the staff training components, but I'm trying to understand where council's role would be in the approval
Correct.
process,
So
aside from the budget.
correct. So my thinking on this was to design this the same way that we have our other committees, like Plan Commission, which I've served on for several years. That we have the ability and a charge to come up with specific items, but ultimately those specific items that deal with operational issues, because of our form of government, have to go through the Common Council, which is the people's body, and has to go through the city manager. Our role would be to make sure that we evaluate the city manager on whether or not we agree with the adoption or lack of adoption of these specific rules. So I want to be very respectful of the form of government, while also having that committee serve its intended governance purposes, serving as a bridge between the community and us.
I would argue that the advisory boards have previously served in a role that provides advisory opinions on potential ordinances and other issues outside of operations. And so maybe we're agreeing, but we're talking about apples and oranges. So how can we allow for both of those to exist? And perhaps other council members want to weigh in on that. Councilmember McGrower.
No, I appreciate that. I have similar sentiments as the mayor. In a nutshell, point blank, I guess, boards and commissions, they serve at the members serve at the pleasure of the mayor, but they're there to advise council. I don't know of any boards and commissions that are there to advise city manager. And says nothing about the city manager and his abilities and his roles within the community and within this organization, but they serve us. They report to us, they make recommendations to us for our consent and for our review and approval. To add another layer in there that could potentially, the city manager or a next one or further down the line, that they could alter those suggestions in a way that committee did not intend before it gets to us possibly. That would be one of my concerns in terms of city manager having that bridge between us, that approval or denial between us. If they've got a suggestion, it should come to us, and it should be up for us to discuss and decide on its merits, whether we should move it forward or not. So that would be one of my concerns with adding that specific language.
Councilmember Allison Osby.
Thank you, Mayor. I certainly appreciate the effort that Councilmember Ford put into it, and I certainly see where you're coming from. There's, especially when it comes to metrics, it's always good to have data. The more data, the better. But I guess my concern is that I don't want to micromanage this committee. I would like to get this committee established. I would like for them to tell us perhaps what they think, and of course sharing between us. I would also hope too that the committee would perhaps want to meet with department heads to understand their roles, their current philosophies, be able to ask any questions in regards to things that certainly may come from the committee as far as recommendations for operations. And so where I think it comes from a very good place, Mr. Ford, I personally would like to let the committee have the openness and the opportunity to really have the input and to drive this committee.
And I think what I understand from Councilmember Ford is that there's an intent here to empower, if I'm interpreting correctly, with maybe change number 4, to empower that committee through the enabling piece of this legislation, along with some potential financial abilities to actually do these things. It's just how we get there, right?
Well, I will,
Yes.
Senator, to speak to your point, Councilwoman Allison Osby, it specifically gives the committee the power to work with city staff to develop metrics and ultimately make recommendations with city staff. So that is purposely built into that, because I totally agree. I do not want to give them, tell this committee that this is specifically what you need to come up with, that these metrics need to be. But I want to make something that is measurable, to make sure that this is something that is built in to our system of government here in the city of Oshkosh. And to speak to Council Member Mugrauer's concerns, I hear you on that, but I will also say the balance between the continuum of management and governance doesn't look the same everywhere. And I guess the disagreement here is whether or not social equity is a core operational value. I believe it is. I don't think it's something to be sent to a committee where that's all they work on. I think it needs to be part of everything. I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, Councilman Bucherauer, but I do think that these equity measures are important as a budgetary measure. It is part of the nuts and bolts of government, in my opinion, and I think it is appropriate for us to have a committee that has some real say to make recommendations, and I think it still respects the form of government that we, as a council, have the ability to evaluate the city manager, whomever that is, on their willingness or lack of willingness to listen to these recommendations.
Mayor Palmieri?
Councilmember Peschel.
Thank you. Councilperson Ford, I want to thank you for putting this forward. So I'm not sure that I share some of the concerns as the rest of the council. So I think a couple of us that sit on the council may have the history in creating a new committee or a new board. And so I actually am one of those sitting council person that has that history. I was on the Sustainability Advisory Board. And I have the distinct remember, I served as a community member before I served as a council member on it. So, but I have the distinct memory of being very challenged in implementing the ideas of goals and a plan after it was created. There was, in my opinion, there were some differences between staff and the committee and leadership of the committee that I think made it very challenging to move forward with creating a plan. And that's what leads me to support your changes here today, because I believe it gives us the teeth to be able to move forward with a greater expectation of what the council is expected, or not the council, but the committee would be expected to create, what outcomes are already expected, instead of being told that we have a year to create. Well, it's going to say to create a year, but there's some built-ins already here with what you're suggesting. I like the idea of the built-ins because I believe it sets a precedent that this area that we're embarking upon is really important, extremely important. So I'm gonna support the whole tonight because I think it strengthens and supports the work that the mayor and the city manager and the staff and all of the work that people have been doing to make this happen for years. So, so thank you.
Councilmember Allison Osby, and then I have a question about where that change number 3 is reflected in the final language.
Thank you, Madam
Councilmember
Mayor.
Allison.
I just want to clarify, I think we're all saying the same thing. I guess what I'm saying and why I'm not in favor of it is not that, I'm not saying that I don't want to empower the committee. What I'm saying is I don't want council telling the committee how to operate. I think we have quality assets within the community that will make up this committee. And I think if what we currently have that the mayor and the city manager have put together, I think is a good guideline. And from there, let the assets that we have within the community come together and tell us, is this how they want to handle measurements or metrics or whatever. I guess I'm just saying I don't want to be micromanaging, telling them how to work with staff or how to evaluate or anything of that nature. I would like it to come from our citizens. So for that reason, I won't be supporting it, but I think essentially, Mr. Ford, we're saying the same thing, but I think you're coming at it from this way and I want to come at it from this way.
And certainly, recommendations can come out of that. I guess I just want to kind of go down to the section that talks about, what that end goal is that we hope to achieve with this committee. Within 1 year of creation, report to the city manager and common council on goals of the committee and identify resources necessary to achieve said goals, information relative to community diversity, equity, and inclusion to share with the general public and underserved populations, and to identify best practices of community diversity, equity, and inclusion for health, housing, and economic mobility that the city, meaning council, may consider adopting. Therefore, the committee shall annually report to the city manager and common council on future needs and recommendations. So if you're asking, what is this committee going to do? That's the piece that addresses that. If I could, I would also just like to bring up a potential amendment, and then we can maybe come back and decide on this one. And that is part of the ordinance references the membership and the terms. And as I sent this draft to the people who had been working on giving input as to what they wanted to see on this committee, and they sent comments back in, it's also come to my attention that we might consider having specific spots for the school district and or university in addition or as part of the makeup of this committee. And I did speak with one of the school board president, and that was something that would be desired. I know that the university has been, very interested in this as well. So I just bring that to council for possible consideration as well. Councilmember Erickson.
Thank you. Just to clarify, would that be staff from school district and university or students?
Well, keep in mind, we have created a new allowance for youth ex officio members to be part of any of our advisory boards and commissions. Similarly, we also have 2 additional alternates. So while this identifies 9 members, one of which would be a council liaison, there are additional 2 alternate positions as well as the ex officio youth members. So any school district or university would be separate and distinct from that, or we could include it in the total. I think it's worth us having that discussion. Councilmember Mugrauer.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I've got a couple a couple things. I guess one kind of coming back to yours, Madam Mayor, and then I guess I want to address a couple things with Councilmember Ford's possible changes. Just so we're clear on the makeup as written, should consist of 9 members. You just mentioned that one council member would be included that 9. The way this is written is that one council member would not be included that 9.
My apologies. I stand corrected.
Okay.
I
just want to
stand
make sure
corrected.
that we're on the same page with that. And I appreciate that addition, that part where it's one of the concerns I have with some of our boards and commissions and how they how council members interact on some of those is that council can at times push the agenda or push things to go a certain way. And this, above all else, this committee, as Councilmember Allison Osby has alluded to, and Mr. Ford, and I'm confident the rest of my colleagues up here, we want whatever comes from this committee to be what this committee wants. It's not one person's personal agenda. It's a collective effort that that everybody gets to come together and try to figure out, some best practices and some good suggestions. So I just wanted to say thank you for including that part, because I appreciated that.
And reiterating that they do not have voting
Correct.
rights,
Yep.
so they cannot, it would
can
have to come
participate.
back to the full council.
Yep.
Yep.
So I appreciate that part. And then on to Councilmember Ford's possible changes. I guess kind of not necessarily going line by line here, but number 1, I don't mind that addition. I think it's a reasonable addition. I think we included that. Actually, I know we included number 1, your change 1 in the Rental Housing Advisory Board when that was created before my time, but a similar statement is included in that, and I think that's reasonable to make sure that it's written in stone that we expect this to represent the community as best as possible, that it should not just be loaded with one side or another, that it should be a diverse and well-rounded group of committed individuals. Number 2, I'm a bit ambivalent. I know you mentioned you spoke with city staff on this one. I think I take a similar mindset to Councilmember Allison Osby that adding too much to this starts to tell this committee what to do. That you have to use this, you need to use this, you need to do this. You do need to give this board, this committee, some breathing room, some ability to just figure out their path. And so I'm a bit ambivalent. I can go either way on that one, but just my thoughts on that one. And number 4, actually, you're one that goes on to page 4, where I think you create a new number 5.
Yes.
Basically, the biggest change in there is that you add some equity or some metric information. I'm concerned by letter A. You're adding 5 to 7 equity performance measures for each city department, developed by each department and approved by the committee. From anyone who's ever done a performance review, where HR tells you must have 5 good things or 5 bad things or 5 things that you need to improve upon next year, the way that process works is 1 to 2 of them ends up being really good, and 3, 4, and 5 tend to be just fillers. Let's just be honest about how performance appraisals tend to work sometimes. I would hate to put it on this committee that they have to report a set number no matter the quality. They want to bring 10 to us, bring 10 to us. You got one excellent idea, bring 1. But to set in stone that you have to bring X number, I know it's a bit semantic, it's more style than substance. And I know the HR director, Fitzpatrick, back there would beg to differ on my analysis of performance reviews and what happens in those goal-setting meetings, but that would just be one of those things that kind of stands out to me, that maybe it's us telling them again what they should do. Other than that, I think as the whole, Councilmember Allison Osby, I think summed it up right. We're coming at it from different areas, but we're all actually, we're speaking the same language. We're just trying to get there a little bit.
So would council have an interest in voting on each of the proposed amendments separately?
That's what I was going to suggest, ma'am.
That would probably be better.
Okay.
We could do that.
All right. Councilmember Ford.
Yeah, just real quick. First off, yes, I agree with Councilwoman Allison Osby that, the reason I said at the beginning, no doubt about your intent, no doubt that we're looking for a common solution here. My thinking, and being more specific, is to ensure that this committee has a charge right at the beginning In my previous life, I was involved in far too many blue ribbon commissions on things at the state level, and that's where good ideas went to die, so we could say that we're doing something about it, and nothing tangible came out of it, so I want something. I think it's so important that we do something tangible. On the use of an external organization, the Government Alliance on Race and Equity, the language there specifically states Government Alliance on Race and Equity and/or other comparable organizations. My goal there in this amendment is to make sure that there is some external resource that this committee has the ability to use. Because if we just get a bunch of people in a room and say we're here to talk about equity, we need to have some common language defined. We need to make sure people know where to go, how to talk about this, to make sure we get something tangible and lasting. And on the last point, on the 5 to 7, this is the nerd in me, but those are evidence-based numbers coming out of the research from the National Alliance of Public Administration, based on the many communities who have taken similar steps around the country, and that has been shown to be a number where it's not seen as a overwhelming task and also not seen as a task where you're trying to find one perfect metric for it. So again, your points are well taken. Trust me, I work at the university. I do all kinds of pointless measurements all day long. I'm tenured, I can say that now. But that's my rationale behind the 5 to 7. It didn't just come out of thin air.
Councilmember Erickson.
Thank you. I'm also supportive of the amendments. I think having the 5 to 7 as a framework for the committee is helpful. I would just like to pose the question. I've received this question before, and I know that a couple other municipalities have had this in similar committees. If for the membership, we have that due consideration would be given, making sure that membership reflects the characteristics of the community. I know Portage County just recently is proposing a committee that requires 2/3 membership from marginalized communities. I think that's something I would be supportive of. I know there's some feelings about that, but I think making sure that we have a committee that truly reflects populations that haven't been represented before. If you look at all of our other boards and commissions, it's definitely not reflective. So I would like to pose the question if we would require 2/3 membership from marginalized communities.
So are you offering that as an amendment to the amendment?
Yes.
Okay. Do we have a second on that item? I'll second it. Discussion on the amendment of adding specific language that says shall require 2/3 membership by marginalized populations. And what are you suggesting striking in that language?
Yeah, so I think requiring 2/3 membership of marginalized communities, particularly people of color and LGBTQ.
City manager.
I'm just giving you a few decades of experience with boards and commissions in general. The definition of marginalized would need to be made because my staff is responsible for sorting applicants for the mayor to consider, and we would need direction on what marginalized would be. That's one. My experience would tell me that I think Councilmember Ford's intent is to try to get a diverse group of people. I could see the mayor being in a situation where she doesn't have a certain profile that you need, and then that position could go vacant for several months.
Would we be able to meet both needs by saying from protected classes?
Again, define protected classes.
The protected classes that are recognized by the federal government.
Then you would need to be more specific about that, because you need to have something to refer to. So if you want to say the federal government, that would be okay, but that wasn't Councilmember Erickson.
Right, I'm just saying that could be, because then there's not a specific number.
Yeah, it's just that I can tell you from experience, the minute you start limiting those, you could find vacancies, and it's like, oh, I would love to have you on this committee, person A, but you don't meet the profile that's required, therefore I can't appoint you because you're missing something. When you have those set areas, if the council decides they want to do that, I certainly, that's council's choice, but I can see vacancies happening for an extended period of time because you're trying to find the right person to fit a very strict profile rather than a broader profile. My only suggestion would be to add some specificity. You added some specificity, but that was part of the motion. And with respect to even the university, if you don't find somebody from the university you like, then do you have to take somebody from the university that you don't think would be a good member? No offense, Mr. Ford. But if you want to have an additional people from the university, I think that's incumbent upon the mayor then to seek that person out. If they can't find somebody from the university, maybe somebody from the
Well, we
tech
have
school.
that in some of our other boards and commissions where we have reserved seats for the school board president.
By law on.
Yes.
By law.
But some of those are,
Yes.
but you have, I'm just telling you from experience, you will find yourself, maybe not immediately, but down the road, you'll have difficulties filling those positions. And then you're going to say, why did we do this? And then it's like, well, it's all well intended, but you'll have vacancies that will go unfilled because you're missing one person that you need to have. I don't want to use the word quota necessarily, but if you limit yourselves, then you could have a great person that comes and could provide great perspective. If you disagree with me, this is council's call. I'm just giving you from experience. I've seen these, and the ones you raised, those are the problems with those. We'd like to have somebody from the school board, but we can't find anybody. Usually they just say, you're in, but.
I think that there's some language, the president of the school board or something like that, that could be very specific. And most of the time they have a president of their school board, right?
I'm not intending to be argumentative. I'm telling you, I've seen
Councilmember
vacancies.
Asby?
So I guess a question that I have is, for all good intentions and purposes, I think we wanted to pass this right away, but I'm looking at, I think there's, in order to get this right, because obviously we didn't see the draft of this till Friday, we're just seeing this today, and if there's going to be a lot more discussion, we have a number of people outside that are waiting and in the chambers, so, is this better served for us to be able to chew on this a little bit and maybe come back, or somehow, I don't know, is there a way to adopt it but open it for additions 2 weeks from now so that
We could bring it back for reconsideration, right, city
because I want to
attorney?
be considerate to
To
those
add
who might be
amendments?
here to speak, who may have children at home.
You could bring it back for reconsideration at the next meeting, if you so desire.
So we could pass it as proposed and bring back any additions at the next meeting. Because we've already voted that we wanted to waive the rules and adapt it this evening.
Right.
So let's take a vote, unless anybody has anything else outside of the amendments.
Or you could lay it over.
Lay it over.
You could still do a motion to lay over until next meeting, even though you had done the waiver.
Point of order?
Councilmember Peschel?
Sure. So I don't disagree with the suggestion to lay it over. But in order to do that, I think we have to undo one or two amendments that are on the floor already.
Withdrawn.
Real quick, Mayor.
Yes.
I believe that this group of amendments are currently on the floor. I would love to take a vote on that as one substitute amendment.
Technically, Ms. Erickson's amendment to the amendment is on the floor. There was a motion and a second.
Okay.
I guess my point was, this doesn't seem like a discussion that's going to end anytime soon, and we clearly have other people that would like to speak to other things on it. So I'm just trying to figure out how to be fair.
So would you like to withdraw your amendment for tonight?
Yes.
Okay, and I believe I seconded, so I'll withdraw my second. Councilmember Ford, do you want to vote on your amendment, or do you want to withdraw it?
I would love to take a vote.
Okay. So we'll take a vote for tonight. Please call the roll on
Point of
the.
order, can we,
Point,
Go ahead, Bob. You're going where I'm going to go.
I also think that Councilmember Mugarauer made a suggestion to break these down, that if we're going to vote on Mr. Ford's amendment tonight, that we vote on them change by change. So,
Yes. Yes, that was suggested.
Pam, what do you need from us to do that? Do you need any different?
Motion to divide.
Just divide it.
Motion to divide?
Motion to divide
All right.
the changes.
Do I have a second for motion, on the motion to divide?
sure.
All right, any discussion on that motion? All right. Please call the roll on the motion to divide the amendments as proposed.
Ford,
Aye.
Allison Osby,
Aye.
Crozy,
Aye.
Mugrower,
Aye.
Erickson,
Aye.
Peschel,
aye.
Palmieri,
Aye.
carried 7.
All right, so we would,
Do you need motions and seconds on each individual
I'm going to
one?
need a motion
Okay.
and a second on change number 1.
So move.
Second.
Second,
Discussion on change number 1. Please take the roll.
Ford,
Aye.
Allison Osby,
Aye.
Crozy,
Aye.
Mugrower,
Aye.
Erickson,
Aye.
Peschel,
aye.
Palmieri,
Aye.
carried 7.
All right. I'll need a motion and a second for change number 2. That's provide city membership in established organization that provides resources regarding racial equity training and practices.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion on change number 2? Councilmember Allison Osby.
Thank you. Just a question in regards to provides city membership in an established organization that provides resources regarding racial equity training and practices. Is that in regards to the $1,000?
There would be, after discussions with city staff, there'd be no allocation
There'd be no
attached to this.
Okay, so it's just that giving them, okay, I
Yep,
understand.
Just giving them the authority to do it.
Okay.
All right.
Mayor, may I?
Councilmember Peschel.
Sure. I think my question's actually for Mr. Roloff. So, how often do you see this type of framework put into the makeup of, the constitutional makeup of committees and such?
Not very often, but it's not unusual. Councilmember Ford refers to GARE, which is something that, when we were talking about the $20,000 for training for city employees, it was going to include the membership in GARE. So we're connected on this one.
And
You know,
the Government Alliance on Race and Equity basically would be an advisory tool for that advisory board, correct?
It's exactly what the SAB, the Sustainability Advisory Board, did with their membership in ICLEI.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
don't ask me what that stands for.
Okay.
But we did that, and we built that into the planning department's budget, and we are members of ICLEI.
Okay.
So that would be comparable to this. And if somebody became dissatisfied with GARE, this would still allow us to say, okay, we want to dump our membership in GARE, we can go somewhere else, some other organization. So it's not that unusual, and we're already accustomed to it.
Okay, so that's on change number 2. We need to take a vote on change number 2.
Ford,
Aye.
Allison Osby,
Aye.
Crozy,
Aye.
Mugrower,
Aye.
Erickson,
Aye.
Peschel,
Aye.
Palmieri,
Aye.
carried 7.
Okay, so on change number 3, your recommendation is to add section number 4 under duties that within 6 months of creation to develop a web page to be utilized by the organization. Okay, so I need a motion and a second for change number 3.
So moved.
Second.
All right, discussion. Yep, Councilmember McGrower.
Appreciate it. Thank you. In several of my comments on all sorts of different topics, even earlier tonight when I mentioned a go-to page for a clearinghouse of all information. I like the idea. My only concern is just the necessity to keep putting specific parameters on this committee. I think they're going to want to do this. I know Rental Housing Advisory wanted to get information out on web pages or on useful tools for the community members, and I'm confident they're going to want to do something like that. Is it splitting hairs that we required in there? So that's where I'm at on that one.
And I'd have to agree with Councilmember Mugrower. I want this committee to make their own plan of what their priorities are. So I won't be able to support this change. Councilmember Ford,
Yeah.
and then Councilmember Allison Osby.
For what it's worth, this was something that was, language that was changed in the amendment through discussions with HR staff. They saw this as more workable. I agreed with them. My intent in establishing that this is published is not to tell the committee what to do, but to ensure that the means for the public and for the public to hold us accountable exists, that it's baked into the legislation.
And I was just going to say, I was going to ask for, status updates at 60, 90, and 120 days. And I think that whoever the council liaison is to that committee, as we report out each of our individual committees and actions, that could be done in that fashion. But certainly, some form of written report. I mean, I would expect we would get regular status updates, but I think the idea is not to get too prescriptive. So does anybody else, Councilmember Allison Osby?
Nope, just
Okay.
ditto to what both of you and Councilmember Mugrower.
So if we
said.
could take a vote then. Sorry, Councilmember Peschel, did you want to weigh in?
I did, thank you. So I think my issue is the idea of creating something that's specific to our lifetime right now. I mean, the idea of a web page is something that has existed in our last 20 years of life. I don't know if a web page is going to exist 30, 40 years down the line. So, and I think that's my only concern with this, is that the tool that I think it'd be better to change the word web page with a tool that can be utilized by the organization and community as a resource to advance diversity, equity, and inclusion. I don't know what the future looks like in regards to technology. I think the idea that a web page is like that resource, like we created pamphlets and we create dashboards and all of that stuff. I mean, it's a minimal change, and somewhere down the line we might have to take out the word web page in this. So that's just my thought. So I'd offer an amendment. Instead of putting develop a web page, but develop a tool.
All right.
Web page tool.
Thank you. Councilmember Ford?
That's fine.
All right. Can we please take the roll?
Ford,
Aye.
Allison Osby,
No.
Krause,
No.
Mugrower,
No.
Erickson,
Aye.
Peschel,
Aye.
Palmieri,
No.
lost 3-4.
Change number 4, I need a motion and a second. That's to empower the DEI committee to recommend annual department developed equity performance metrics, recommend annual measurable equity goals, and require reporting of goals and progress in the annual budget and on a city website.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. Councilmember McGrower.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think the way it was originally written is well intended. I think it hits all the parameters that we're looking for. I think the change gets too prescriptive, too detailed, unfortunately, for my liking, and that's why I won't support it.
Other discussion? All right, please take the roll on change number 4.
Ford,
Aye.
Allison Osby,
No.
Krause,
No.
Mugrower,
No.
Erickson,
Aye.
Peschel,
Aye.
Palmieri,
Aye.
carried 4-3.
All right. So those were the amendments. And that takes us back to, do we want to look at the amendment regarding adding a school board person or university person as an addition to the makeup? Or shall we take that up at a future discussion?
I would prefer to take it up for the reasons I cited before.
Yep, okay. All right, so we take the roll on the full-on amended resolution now.
Ordinance. Ordinance.
Ordinance, excuse me. All right.
Ford.
Aye.
Allison Osby.
Aye.
Krause.
Aye.
Mugrower.
Aye.
Erickson.
Aye.
Peschel.
Aye.
O'Meary.
Aye.
Carried 7.
All right. So next we have on our agenda, item number 30. It's a future agenda item. Next steps to eliminate racism in Oshkosh. I asked this to be placed on the agenda. I just want to make a small statement, and then we can go into the people that have registered to speak on this item. First of all, I want to say good evening and thank you everyone who came to this Common Council meeting to engage in your city government. I want to take a moment to acknowledge our community members, along with other communities, pain and public grieving for George Floyd's and others' tragic passing. There are no words, I'll repeat that, there are no words that can fix this. We are actively listening. Don't mistake our listening for silence. Holding local government accountable is the entire community's right and responsibility. My question is, and I'm listening, we're listening, what does healing from grief and pain of systemic racism include at the local level in Oshkosh? What does that look like? You are part of that answer. Your mostly peaceful protests and assemblies requesting racism be eliminated have given this council and local government the message that requires action at the policy level. Please share your vision for the removal of systemic racism going forward. Calling for change takes a lot of courage. Being part of the change requires us all to listen and move into healing as a community. And the reason why we placed this on here is for that very reason, to give that opening for those comments to be made and community conversations to, the ones that have begun already, to continue. And with that, I'll ask the clerk who we have registered for this item.
The first 3 individuals are Charlotte Underwood, Darren Fields, and Brooklyn Williams.
Welcome.
Good evening, council members and Mayor O'Meary. First of all, I can't breathe in this thing. I'm sorry. I want to thank you guys for letting me speak. I was an Oshkosh resident for 30 plus years. I don't live here anymore, but I have seeds here. I have children, grandchildren, sisters, nephews, nieces, and I want to see this change for them. Excuse me if I start crying, but I want to share a story with you guys. Okay. I'm sure many of you council members are familiar with Wisconsin statute 940.21 against the crime of mayhem. It states, whoever with the intent to disable or disfigure another cuts or mutilates the tongue, eye, ear, nose, lip, limb, or other bodily member of another is guilty of a Class C felony. That's what the statute states. But 10 years ago, my oldest son was hit in the eye by a white boy, and the DA charged this white boy with a misdemeanor. When I called a meeting with the DA to see why he was not charged with this felony, his question to me was, why do you think he should be charged with a felony? What about his right to vote and his right to bear arms? Well, what about my child's right to see? Since then, my son has changed. He's had countless surgeries. He's lost 40% of his vision in his eye. And I'm just wondering, is this committee going to change decisions like that? Because I'm pretty sure if it had been the other way around and my son had did that to a white boy, I wouldn't be standing here today. And I think the reason I'm bringing this up is because this is time for me to bring it up. At the time, I didn't have money to fight it. But now I have a voice. This is the time that I want to bring it up. And hopefully this committee can stop things like this from happening. Because I don't want to come up here and have to have my son or my grandchild telling me that they've been wronged by the police. You know, I have a lot of history in Oshkosh. I've been through a lot in Oshkosh. And I moved 2 years ago, and I want my kids to feel safe. I want my grandchildren to feel safe. I want my nieces and nephews to feel safe. And if this committee that you're organizing can do that, I would really appreciate it. Because I love this city. I would love to move back here. But not until something is done about this. Seriously. Thank you.
Thank you.
Darren Fields.
Welcome.
Thank you for allowing me here. My name is Darren Fields. The reason why I decided to speak, I'm a father of 3 daughters. I'm 22 years old. I've been living here in Appleton. I've been living in Nashua, Oshkosh, everywhere. It is time for this generation to make a change. The generation that's here now in reality is what's going to shape our future for all of us. What can this committee do? What can the city of Oshkosh do and elsewhere to have more African Americans on the board, to have more African Americans running to be a mayor? What can we have in this justice system? More police officers. I asked the chief of the fire department, how many black brothers or sisters do you have on your department? None. That's a problem. Because it starts with you guys for us to be able to make it to our future. It starts with you guys in this committee for us to be able to go to sleep and wake up and know that our kids have a future as well too. We sit here and we go through so much. We sit here and we lose so much. We lose our families, we lose our friends. Until there's a change, we're gonna forever be in this 20th century of where we are now in reality. It's not about changing the history, it's about changing the reality for the future. 401 years, it's time to make a change. The people of my community are tired. Our voices hurt. We can't sleep. We fear the fact of being pulled over by a police officer. We fear the fact of not being able to have a job, to be a part of this, to be on the committee, to be on the board because of the color of our skin. We are not silent. And until there's a change, we're going to forever be here. So what can you guys do? What can the committee do to make a change for our future, for our generation today? Thank you.
Thank you.
Brooklyn Williams.
Hi, thank you for having me. One thing I think that is super important that needs to happen right now is mental health checks every 6 months to a year for every single police officer on the force. The often excuse is, well, I wasn't in the right mind, as an excuse to murder, which is wrong and needs to change. I also think that there needs to be more minority police officers to deal with situations. There's not enough African American police officers, Asian police officers, Mexican police officers on the force to go in for those white police officers who can't control themselves. Cops with racist complaints or racist backgrounds should not be able to deal with situations that involve minorities, African Americans, Mexicans, Asians, etc. There needs to be more punishment in school for kids who are racist. It shouldn't be tolerated, and they should be suspended. Lastly, I think that the education system needs to change. The textbooks that we read are so whitewashed that we can't learn about real history. It's white history, you know? Yeah, that's what I think is most important for Oshkosh to be better, all cities to be better. And, yeah.
Thank you, Brooklyn.
Dimitri Reed, Ray Rattler, Steve Barney.
Do I just start speaking? I
Yes.
wanted to know,
Welcome.
like, what can y'all do for like felons, so like we can have equal opportunity again in the community? Because I feel like after a while, like people change and they become better, and I just feel like to tell us we can't protect ourselves and we can't vote, I feel like it's a stigma that's being placed on us. And I feel like that's a form of like, I feel like they use that, and they can use that in like to like camouflage their racism. So I just feel like they should set more parties and like make some type of program for like past criminals, so they can be productive in the community. I'm sorry I didn't put nothing together. This is my first time.
No, that's
here, so-
okay. It's, you're good. So what I hear you saying is, if I just heard that last, is more employment opportunities for people who have felonies on their record?
Yes. Pardon, so they can like expunge their record, so they can like start fresh and clean. And I feel like it should be done like throughout Wisconsin. Like I feel like this should be something talked about with the governor of Wisconsin, because like they been like denying pardons for like years, and which I've been hearing about it, but I never actually did the procedures to like get a pardon, because it's like I was discouraged just hearing that the government wasn't accepting it. So.
Well, thank you for sharing. Councilmember Krause, I'm sorry,
Sure.
Deputy Mayor Krause.
Sure. First of all, I want to say thank you for coming up to speak. I know it's hard.
Yeah, this is my first
It's
time.
intimidating, yep.
I wanted to put something together, but I didn't.
Yeah, what I suggest is apply for our boards and commissions, apply for this diversity board. I mean, get us seat at the table, have a voice.
Okay.
Give direction to us as a city, send direction to the state.
Okay.
New ideas from people that don't usually have a voice is the best thing for
Right.
sure. So thank you. Thank you for coming.
Ray Rattler.
I can take this off, but it's hot.
Welcome.
Thank you. I just want to start off with he said too. Ain't jail jail is here to make people better and help them change, right? So how come when you go to jail, your life changed for the worse? How come when you go to jail, you get out and you can't vote? You can't do a lot of things, but shouldn't that help you change? Why can't I vote if I'm in here and I'm supposed to change my ways? How do you know if I got out, if I changed or not? If you're not helping me become a better person, if I'm not part of the community no more. I went in jail, part of the community. I get out, not part of the community. I'm X'd out of my whole life now. I just want to start with that, like you just said. And then the education system. This year was the first year they celebrated Martin Luther King's Day at school. How does that make sense? Because it's a white community, they shouldn't know about black lives. They shouldn't know about the leaders. They all died. They're all dead for being leaders. There's no reason my mama should be calling me in the morning crying my woman crying all night because I'm becoming a black leader for my people because they scared I'm gonna die by the police. So we need to change the education system, teach them more, because my whole life I celebrated Martin Luther King's Day, my whole life. And then I come here and then I hear my woman, she in school and can't even, I mean, she still got to go to school on one of the most important days for our culture. And then, that was violence. And then police. Somebody wanted me to say this when I got up here. 8 can't wait needs to get, she said 8 can't wait needs to get brought up. If you can't shoot at a moving vehicle, then we need to reopen July 31st Isaiah Tucker, because he was shot by Aaron, definitely don't know how to say that name, and Kyle Roberts. If you all are admitting with this 8 can't wait that shooting at a vehicle is wrong, then you need to remove the tool from the force for experiencing and murder 2017 July 31st Isaiah Tucker. And I want to touch on that too, because if you have a past of discrimination as a police officer, why are you still on this force? Why are you still with this? If you have a past of, if you kill somebody while you on this force, why after that you still on this force? Why don't you get moved to somewhere else? Because now you got people scared to get pulled over by you. You got people scared to even get a ticket by you or look at your way because you're a killer now. It's a difference. You have to move different. You have to live different. And when we was protesting, the chief of police told me a black guy was on the force and he was removed off the force, basically fire or quit. It doesn't matter. He's not on the force no more because he wasn't disciplined, right? But 2 men can murder someone and still be on the force, on that same force, where a black man couldn't be on there because he wasn't disciplined. Can you please tell me how that worked? How? No, because no matter what, we're never free. And I'm speaking as from a black man, we're never free. If I'm out here, I can die by the police. If I'm in jail, I'm a legal slave. Tell me where can I be free? And this is the land of the free. We will never be united if the person that's supposed to protect us is killing us. A man stood on another man's neck for 8 minutes. When we at the protest, we do 8 minutes of silence for George Floyd. And when we do the 8 minutes of silence, I have everybody raise their hand up after 8 minutes just to see if it was too long. Because we're doing it by choice. He did it by force. So if we feel like laying on our back and sitting down for 8 minutes is too long, I know it was too long for that man to be standing on his neck. So it's no such thing as being, if you kill someone, I don't care if it's justified or not, how was you still on the same force? It's no justified of things that you see on camera. How can you justify somebody standing on someone's neck and then the police officers not saying anything, not going to email that station? They're not with us. I'm sorry to say it. It's the truth. We just need help. We need to put out there and vote for the chiefs. Y'all need to change that. The community need to be involved in the police force. That's the only way we can make a change with that. Because we don't know who's leading us. When I go out there and lead my team, lead my protest, I tell them about my past. I tell them who I am as a person. I let them know about me so nobody can ever slander my name. Because I'm a leader. That's what I'm doing. I'm leading my people to success. So they know about me. I don't know nothing about Dean Smith. Not one thing, but whatever he tell me. You can know somebody your whole life and find out they're a rapist or they're a pedophile. And then when you get told about it, you like, not the person I know. That can't be them. That can't be. But the facts is there. The facts is there. So I just want to say we need to start with education. Because when a kid grow up, their best friend is black, white, Mexican, whatever. Because kids don't see race. That is taught. It's not genetic. So we just need to work on their education, teaching them about more than just black history, Hispanic history, everybody's history, because it's all important. It's history for a reason. Martin Luther King and Malcolm X exist. They only know about Martin Luther King. They don't know about Malcolm X. They know Rosa Parks, that too. They don't know about Malcolm X because he was a strong black man. And people don't, and a lot of people don't want them to know that. They don't know that he stood up. They don't even know about Black Wall Street. I bet a lot of y'all probably don't know about Black Wall Street. They tear down that street because it was built up by black people. They broke it up. They teared it down. Yeah, I see you didn't even know about that. I'm only 21, giving you a history lesson.
There you go.
So we need to start with education. That's the most important thing, because if I'm not educated, then I'm lacking somewhere. And if I'm lacking somewhere, I can die for that. So I just want to know, we need to start with education. Y'all need to put the community more into the police force. Y'all need to put the community in more of decisions, because we don't know who leading us. We can be leading. It's not leading. We're self-destructing if we not helping. If we the United States, can y'all help us be united? That's all I gotta say.
Thank you. Clerk, how many more people do we have registered? We're at the 2-hour mark where we would typically take a recess.
Steve Barney.
That's the only person left to speak?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, all right. So nobody else is out in the hallway waiting on this?
I just sent information to Angela. She hasn't responded yet, so maybe
Okay.
if Mr. Fitzpatrick could go check.
Okay, so council, how about we plan to take a brief recess after Mr. Barney speaks? All right? Okay, come on up, Steve.
Lou, I'm here in solidarity with the protest against police brutality and racism. Since George Floyd's killing on Memorial Day, we've all borne witness to widespread police brutality throughout this nation against protesters and the media people covering them. That seems to indicate a systemic problem in policing in general, and that's why I'm here. I have emailed you in the last few days a number of suggestions to help you get started. President Obama's My Brother's Keeper Alliance, a suggestion of perhaps a more diverse police force, and perhaps a black chief of police. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Steve. So when we come back from our recess, Chief Smith, would you be available to talk about some of these next steps in response to, and council have a discussion about what some of those next steps could be in relation to some of the requests? I couldn't hear.
Available to answer your questions.
All right.
Will be available.
Okay, so let's recess.
Are we all done?
Nobody else is registered to speak.
All right, so let's recess and be back at 10 after.
Thank you.
The Oshkosh Common Council is currently in a break. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. This is GovTV, opening accessibility and understanding of local government, helping you to be informed and involved. Also streaming live and on demand at oshkoshmedia.org and radio simulcast on Oshkosh FM 101.9. Like us on Facebook at our Oshkosh Media page. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. Please stay with us. Coverage will resume shortly. The Oshkosh Common Council is currently in a break. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. This is GovTV, opening accessibility and understanding of local government, helping you to be informed and involved. Also streaming live and on demand at oshkoshmedia.org and radio simulcast on Oshkosh FM 101.9. Like us on Facebook at our Oshkosh Media page. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. Please stay with us. Coverage will resume shortly. The Oshkosh Common Council is currently in a break. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. This is GovTV, opening accessibility and understanding of local government, helping you to be informed and involved. Also streaming live and on demand at oshkoshmedia.org and radio simulcast on Oshkosh FM 101.9. Like us on Facebook at our Oshkosh Media page. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. Please stay with us. Coverage will resume shortly. The Oshkosh Common Council is currently in a break. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. This is GovTV, opening accessibility and understanding of local government, helping you to be informed and involved. Also streaming live and on demand at oshkoshmedia.org and radio simulcast on Oshkosh FM 101.9. Like us on Facebook at our Oshkosh Media page. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. Please stay with us. Coverage will resume shortly. The Oshkosh Common Council is currently in a break. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. This is GovTV, opening accessibility and understanding of local government, helping you to be informed and involved. Also streaming live and on demand at oshkoshmedia.org and radio simulcast on Oshkosh FM 101.9. Like us on Facebook at our Oshkosh Media page. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. Please stay with us. Coverage will resume shortly. The Oshkosh Common Council is currently in a break. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. This is GovTV, opening accessibility and understanding of local government, helping you to be informed and involved. Also streaming live and on demand at oshkoshmedia.org and radio simulcast on Oshkosh FM 101.9. Like us on Facebook at our Oshkosh Media page. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. Please stay with us. Coverage will resume shortly. The Oshkosh Common Council is currently in a break. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. This is GovTV, opening accessibility and understanding of local government, helping you to be informed and involved. Also streaming live and on demand at oshkoshmedia.org and radio simulcast on Oshkosh FM 101.9. Like us on Facebook at our Oshkosh Media page. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. Please stay with us. Coverage will resume shortly. The Oshkosh Common Council is currently in a break. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. This is GovTV, opening accessibility and understanding of local government, helping you to be informed and involved. Also streaming live and on demand at oshkoshmedia.org and radio simulcast on Oshkosh FM 101.9. Like us on Facebook at our Oshkosh Media page. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. Please stay with us. Coverage will resume shortly. The Oshkosh Common Council is currently in a break. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. This is GovTV, opening accessibility and understanding of local government, helping you to be informed and involved. Also streaming live and on demand at oshkoshmedia.org and radio simulcast on Oshkosh FM 101.9. Like us on Facebook at our Oshkosh Media page. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. Please stay with us. Coverage will resume shortly.
Continuing the agenda item number 30, just wanted to follow up after some of our citizens had some things to say, and the city manager and I and the chief have talked about some of the conversations that have begun since these incidents occurred, and I just wanted for us as a council to be able to have a conversation about community transformation conversations and what can we or are we doing to eliminate racism in the city of Oshkosh. And I believe the chief has started a series of those conversations. City manager, do you want to kind of give a little overview and bring that in?
I think I'll have Chief Smith start, and then we can kind of
Yes.
go back and forth, because there were a lot of issues raised by members of the public, and some are within our jurisdiction and some aren't, and that's not to be an excuse, but there's a lot of deep issues that are clearly out there, and we do have a role.
And I'm sorry, I wasn't expecting a response
that's
to
okay,
those specific items, but how do we go forward?
No, we can't. I don't think we can respond to those.
Right.
But it just demonstrates that it's deeper than just city government. And I think part of the DEI committee is to say, what's our role? What can we ask the community to do? What can they help us to address these issues? And with that, the chief has a few things that he wants to share in terms of community conversations that he's had, and accountability, which I think is paramount in this whole discussion. So Chief, if you could just give a couple of comments.
Well, I, like everybody else, don't like this either, so I'm taking this off, because we gotta have a conversation. First of all, let me start with this. Situation that happened in Minneapolis was absolutely wrong. I made a public statement on the department's social media. There was a murder that occurred in Minneapolis, and that was absolutely wrong. And was it premeditated? I don't think so. But I do think that there was wrongs that were done there, and I think that there were some issues there that I would never, ever hope to ever have to face that as a chief of police. And I publicly have said it, and I'm going to say it again, it was just wrong. It was wrong. It was criminal, what happened. So I say that. So how do we move forward? We have to acknowledge the fact that there's a lot of pain associated out there, and I've engaged the community in different ways to try to have conversation related to that, and trying to have substantive conversation about how this community moves forward, because The situation regarding diversity in this community is not just a law enforcement issue. It's a community issue. We certainly are we're the folks that people turn to as it relates to problems in race relations, and that's been historical. It absolutely has been historical. But how do we move the conversation forward so that as a city of Oshkosh, we are a better community? I spent 2 hours this afternoon talking to a member of our community on a conversation. We had a series of really, really good questions, and we were able to go through each and every one of his questions and have a good discussion. And he was asking me questions specifically on how we operate, how we hire police officers, how we background police officers. Do we give psychological evaluations to police officers? Yes, we do. Talking about our discipline process and our complaint process, how does that happen? And these are things that we certainly need to communicate out. We need to have good substantive conversations with our community members. I've reached out to Pastor Joe Butler, and we're hopefully working with some of our minority community leaders to bring together community conversations to talk about the things that are important to our community. And we're not going to agree on everything. There are things that are out of our control that we cannot change, and there are things that are there may be things that we can find that we can change, but we have to have a conversation related to that. We have to move forward on how we're going to do things like that. As it relates to diversity within the police department, you know what? I looked at our recruiting numbers. We have traveled to UW-Milwaukee. We've traveled to institutions out traditionally black colleges outside of the state of Wisconsin, and we've recruited out there. In the last 5 years, we've had 27 African American applicants apply for the police department in 5 years. That number is horrible. Our applicant pool for African American individuals is incredibly small, and that's across the state. That's not just an Oshkosh thing, that's across the state. And we struggle with that not only in law enforcement, but also I think in the business community, where we don't have a deep pool. And then we have to have qualified applicants to be police officers, and so that pool gets even shallower. And we're trying, and we want more qualified candidates of minority to come in. We have been successful at hiring persons of color, not necessarily African American. We have increased our Hmong population within the police department. We have increased our Hispanic population within the police department. We're diligently trying to increase our African American population in the department, and we've had some successes. That later on we've had issues along the way that we've had to address. We're going to continue to do those things. We're going to continue to actively recruit, but we need our business community to provide resources that make this an attractive place for people to want to come work in order for them to want to come be here. It's not just the police department. It's Oshkosh Corp. It's Bemis. It's Kimberly-Clark. It's businesses need to create an environment that's attractive to all persons to come here and work and live in the city of Oshkosh. That'll allow us to recruit more qualified individuals to become police officers. So we need to have conversations. We need to grow our population base of a minority community and continue the efforts that each of you have discussed tonight on DEI so that we can move forward and be a really good community, even better than we are now. So with that, if you have any questions.
One of the things I'll add, because when we talk about accountability, a lot of people aren't aware that our police department is the only police department in the only law enforcement agency in the entire state of Wisconsin that has national accreditation. That's a very high standard, and we probably need to talk about that more, but not, there's so many details that go into that, but it's demonstrating the department's commitment to accountability, and those standards change because they raise the bar every time the evaluation committee comes in. They raise the bar and have greater expectations for our police department, and our police department continues to rise to that occasion. but we're not perfect as a community, and we're not a perfect police department, but we're committed to improvement, and we have to continue to do that. One of the conversations that the mayor and I had was, when I first got here, there was, big discussions about we need to do infrastructure, need to correct infrastructure. And it's very easy for me to say, we're weak on infrastructure, we need to do a better job on infrastructure. We have a problem with racism, we need to improve on racism, but it's harder to have that conversation. But it's still a problem that we have to face, it's still a problem we have to resolve, and we have the resources to do it, but it's different resources. With infrastructure, it's easy, it's money. This is changing outlooks, changing attitudes, and we are capable of doing it. It's just a matter of, we got to work together. And if this is a wake-up call to that, we're certainly up to that challenge. And I welcome the conversations. I know Chief Smith has already reached out to so many people, and I think it's important for us to do that, and we'll continue to do that. That's all I have, Madam Mayor, unless council members have questions.
I just want to add that, or echo, that it is the community's responsibility, I said that earlier, to also work on the equity and inclusion piece. The diversity is a fact, but inclusion is an act. And, there are, out of the conversations that I've had over the last several years in some of the community members' homes, over coffee, etc., it wasn't always a police issue. It was citizen issue. Maybe just insensitive, maybe just unkind and downright aggressive comments. So we all have a responsibility to work on this, and especially being empathetic to the young people who are out there with protests. They are obviously getting a lot of influence, as we all are, from media from other locations, but not one size fits all. There is no one and done solution. I would just like to publicly recognize the officers that worked with and the protesters that organized with the police department to keep these assemblies peaceful for the most part. While there may have been some exchanges that were quite unpleasant, I was very impressed by the professionalism and restraint that officers showed. And so that's certainly something that I think this community can be very proud of. But as was stated, can we improve in other areas? Can we even review with the public what we do so that they're aware of that asset and how it serves and how it works? That's really, I just wanted to make sure that we had an opportunity as a council to have this conversation, because this is the first time we've met since that 24 hours after that happened, hit the media, right? And people were like, well, aren't we going to come out with statements? This is the first time we've really had a chance to meet since the 26th. We had to have things on the agenda. We couldn't publicly notice something, in less than 24 hours. So here's your chance. Councilmember Mookrower?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And Chief Smith, I appreciate you having an uncomfortable conversation with us. Personally, even just one-on-one, we had some good discussions over the last few days in terms of some of the stuff, even some of the things that some of the men and women that spoke here tonight. So I appreciate your willingness to do that. I want to thank the men and women that spoke here tonight. It takes a lot of guts to stand up in front of us. It can be very intimidating. We don't mean to be intimidating, but it can be by nature. So for those that spoke tonight, and even those that didn't but supported them, it's a big deal that people came and spoke and gave their opinions and gave their thoughts on how to make this community better. So I appreciate their sentiments and their thoughts and their statements this evening. A couple of the common comments, whether via email, whether tonight, in terms of education, in terms of law enforcement, in terms of prosecution and rehabilitation and all those things, I think those are some great stepping stones for the DEI that we created tonight. That those are lots of resources that not everyone knows how to access. That they don't know that we don't control prosecution after the police do their job and complete their actions. They don't know that the school district and the school board have responsibilities in this as well. They don't know that they have access to their state legislatures. And just because I know certain things, it doesn't mean that everyone does know how to access those resources. And I think that's a vital part in this. Is it's not just educating people on these uncomfortable conversations, but also how to get in contact with the people who can make substantive change. And so hopefully that's, I'm not giving any, as I did not want to do it previously when we were voting on things. I don't want to give them a charge. I don't want to give them things to do, but I think those are great, great things that hopefully that they'll have a chance to touch on and try to help people, even if it's just connecting resources at the very beginning. So that's a couple different thoughts on that, but I appreciated everyone's thoughts tonight.
All right. City Manager, did you have something else?
If there's anything in particular that the council would like, because it is listed as a future agenda item, if there's anything in particular you would like, certainly I welcome that input now. That might be better with all 7 of you. I know Mr. Peschel's there too. And if there's anything in particular you would like to us to bring back, whether it's a workshop on what we do relative to police procedures, or the mayor and I talked about, we haven't had a joint meeting with the school district, and there were school issues that are not within our jurisdiction at school. So if there's anything in particular you'd like us to do, I know with all this COVID stuff, you can't keep a mask on, and you can't have a decent conversation. But we can't wait. I mean, we want to get moving on some of this stuff.
Would it be reasonable to, just like we prepare public participation plans for any of our other land use and other programmings, would it be reasonable to ask for a public participation plan that identifies some community transformation workshops? I mean, I don't think this is a one and done thing. What we're hearing is, we can't undo 400 years of bad things in, 2020. What is a reasonable plan for addressing some of these concerns so that there is action and satisfaction?
I think our committee, that's their charge, I think.
Well,
I'm not looking to pawn. I never try to push responsibility on anyone, but we've created something that we want their input. We want them to tell us where those first steps should be.
The scope of that committee is very broad.
For a reason, though.
And I believe that they can weigh in on this. But I also heard, or we also heard, that there's action and there's pain and there's grief and there's story that is specific to the Black community that I'm hearing is a priority above the broader conversation. I'm not saying we can't do them both at the same time, but perhaps I heard it differently than you did. Councilmember Erickson.
Thank you. I agree. I think having this discussion sooner, I'm not sure how long it'll take to have the committee formed and ready to go. But I know we all received lots of comments and questions about some of the police procedures that we have in the city, and thank you, Chief Smith, for the detailed responses that you gave. And I don't know if it would be appropriate for some sort of workshop just to be able to share some of the department practices and, how, what kind of data is collected, if race is collected as part of traffic incidences and that kind of thing, just so that the community can understand your department and those procedures. So I would be open to a workshop or something like that.
Councilmember Allison Osby?
So I guess my question is, would we then at that point include university and school board or school administration into that? Because personal one-on-one conversations that I've had outside of the council, in addition to what I heard this evening, doesn't just limit it to specifically to City Hall or even the police department. There is a number of things that people have certainly have enormous amount of emotion that has built up over years, and especially if they were born and raised in this community, that I do think is incredibly legitimate, but it's not just, it just isn't within our walls. It's a much broader conversation. So I guess I would be in favor of it if it's
a joint workshop,
something joint,
mm-hmm.
and in which it is constructive and it is going to move us forward.
Mm-hmm. So would that be with both the school district and the university?
Again, I'm just suggesting if we're going to bring somebody to the table, that I think then it should be. But again, I think it has to be in a format in which it is constructive and it is something that is going to be progress and for us to move forward. So however, I guess our other stakeholders in the community would like, I think that's a discussion with them. But maybe perhaps Mr. Roloff could reach out and maybe perhaps we could task staff with that.
And I think, we have to kind of define workshop, because our traditional workshop has been one-way information. So perhaps there might be some flexibility with that format.
I've got a million thoughts, but one of the things, we've talked about some of the institutions, but we need to reach out to our community of color to have them with us, because we can come up with this great program that I can look at and say, gosh, I got a really great agenda.
Exactly.
But if it doesn't meet the needs and the concerns, I'm clueless then. And if we're going to, and I used the infrastructure issue earlier, we have to first admit that we need to improve, and then we need to say we need help, assistance, advice. How do we improve? And I think, the chief has a number of contacts. Mayor, I know you do. And maybe what we can do is don't put ourselves under the pressure of doing something next meeting, because we'll just be forcing something that maybe isn't as genuine as we would like it to be. We can't put it off forever either, but give us some time to talk to members of our community, members of color, to say, what can you do? What can you do to help us assist you in being a more welcoming community?
And I know one of the things that I had taken away was that there was an interest in a kind of a town hall where the community members, in addition to, them coming here and expressing concerns here, agreed that it's not just the local government and institutions, that it is a partnership, true community discussion about what those next steps are. And I guess when I was thinking of a public participation plan, it would be similar to some of our tools we've used in the past for identifying that.
I would suggest that before we go there, because, last week's, demonstration where Chief showed up was not necessarily conducive to that type of conversation. We need to have that. I think Councilmember Mugerauer points out, let the DEI committee do some of this, but I think I would love to convene with members of some smaller groups to get some feeling about what we can do to be effective in doing this. If we just convene a meeting and just invite people, somebody, there might be some people, but might be nobody. It's got to be genuine, and I'd rather target our strategies to be effective.
Councilmember Allison Osby?
And
Mayor?
May I add?
Mr. Peschel.
Go ahead, Mr. Peschel.
Thank you. I, I think a couple of us are lifelong residents in the community, and we've had, a world of difference of experiences that are different, than much of the community of color that lives in our community. And for me, I have to sit up here and say, I don't know everything. I experience life a little bit different than someone who lives, someone who is a person of color in the Oshkosh community. So I feel that it's a really important trait to provide the opportunity for those that don't understand, or those that don't know, or those that struggle with racism, that struggle with years and years of society telling them things, or even family telling them things, and just looking for opportunities to overcome that. This is not an easy conversation that we as 7 leaders and a city administration and a school district and a county board and county administration and several nonprofit organizations are going to be able to take care of in 2 weeks, 1 month, 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years. It's a long path. But I think the first thing that we need to do is we need to create an atmosphere that it's okay to come talk to us about it. Chief has taken some steps towards that. I know that all of you have taken some steps towards that. But sometimes I think it's important to provide opportunities for people just to tell their story. And I think that's part of what's going on right now, is that there's a point where this is bubbling over, where stories need to be told. And I think from stories we can glean direction, we can glean guidance, we can provide information and systematic issues to our staff and to our committee that we just tasked. And so I want to think that we have to listen first. We have to provide our community to provide us the stories and the systemic issues that they've been experiencing, so that we can publicly kind of move forward with an idea and a plan. So Mayor Palmieri, you talked about a community transformation workshop, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
So that's an enlightening idea to me, because in order to build our community and to grow our community, we have to transform our community. And part of the way that we do that is we create atmospheres and opportunities for people to listen to each other and to understand each other, and to listen to the hate, and to listen to the love, and listen to the compassion, and to think about what those paths are. My opinion, we don't do this enough in our communities. We do this in our churches, we do this in our nonprofit organizations, but we don't fully do it as a public community. So, so moving forward, I think that has to be a component. We need to provide an opportunity for the community to have these discussions, and not just under the guise of a joint meeting of the school board and the city council, or school board, or county board members. It needs to be a community-wide thing. This is just not to government. This is to our community. So my guidance is, let's open it up and see where it goes. As vague as that is.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Allison Osby.
Well, thank you, Mayor. So I guess a couple of comments. First of all, thank you, Mayor, for opening up with the statements that you did in regards to the conduct of both, for the most part, peaceful protests, in addition to the responsibilities that the chief and his department put forward in keeping everyone safe within that. And to Mr. Peschel's point of opening it up to the community, I guess I would say that I would ask a couple of things, and first and foremost is, not all of Oshkosh is bad, and there's been a lot of that narrative. And so one of the things that I guess I would like to hear as well is, you know, when it comes to talking about racism and inclusion, is what is going well. It would be nice to know different perceptions of what is going well and how can we take that and have that as a foundation to move forward. Obviously, we have lots of room for an improvement, and we've established that for quite some time this evening, and I think we're all on the same page with that. But if we open it up for community-wide, I would ask that it would be a civil, productive, and meaningful conversation. I will say, and this will be a bold statement, I never want to put any of our staff in any department in a situation in which the civility agreement is not executed. So I am all for community discussion, I'm all for moving forward, but I would ask that it would be in a civil manner. We do have that pledge with the city, and we make that abundantly clear in a number of other situations, so I definitely would appreciate that if we're going to talk about a larger, broader conversation.
Just for a visual aid.
Yes. I don't know.
Just hold it up.
And that's all I have to say, Mayor.
All right. Anybody else?
Mayor, if I may.
Chief, yes, please.
I would offer this invitation to any one of our elected officials, and as I've offered up to any of our community members, and I appreciate Pastor Joe Butler being here. We've had good conversation over the years, and Pastor Butler we've had conversation about doing exactly what you're talking about, and I feel strongly that as a member of our community and a man of color, that he be a part of those discussions. And he has a group of persons who facilitated a conversation similar to this in Appleton that I saw pieces of it, and I heard some evaluation from it, and I thought it was productive, and it allowed the elected officials an opportunity to hear. But it was not the police department that was mediating it. It wasn't, forgive me, but it wasn't an elected council member who was facilitating it. It was a member of our community that's facilitating it, not government facilitating it. And I think that that's a really important piece that we need to remember. And I know Pastor Butler is available and ready to assist our community. I say that and be able to chew on that a little bit, but I also want to say to each one of you as elected officials and again as community members, if at any point you have questions about what we do, I'm more than happy to sit down with you, as I've done with some of you, and answer your questions. I'm very proud of what our police department does. I'm very proud of the work that we do. As is mentioned, we always can figure out ways to be better at what we do, but I'm more than happy to sit down and talk to any one of you. As most of you, our two new council members, we haven't had an opportunity to talk because of masks and everything else going on. But I offer that up to you to say let's also talk, so you can hear some of the really great things that your police department does, and also some areas that are challenging to us, and you can ask me the tough questions along the way, and I'll be more than happy to answer them for you. Thank you.
Well, I think most council members would be very honored to have that invitation if community members would host us rather than, you coming to this space. Certainly, many of us, we make house calls. I was out at the park for someone yesterday for quite a bit of time, so they could show me what their concern was. And I know my fellow council members are very responsive to phone calls and emails, and everybody, I believe, would be honored to have those kinds of invitations. Well, thank you. We do have some of the pending ordinances. Do you have what you need then, Mr.?
Yeah, I think it's,
okay.
Do some outreach and we'll report back. I'll put it on my list of outstanding issues. Because this is a big outstanding issue that we've got to.
And it's a priority one that we, should make, I do believe there are a handful are still outstanding there.
Very good.
All right,
Thank
so
you.
we'll move into the pending ordinances. 20-256. Do we have anyone registered for any of these pending ordinances, Pam?
For number 31, Mr. Mike Carls is in the audience to answer questions, not necessarily speak.
To answer questions, all right. So 256, approve comprehensive land use plan amendment from light density residential to medium and high density residential for properties located at 2600 block of Witzel. Council, we need a motion and a second.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. Councilmember Mugrower.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. To the applicant that's here, or at least the representative of the applicant, if you don't have to come up if you don't want to, but I just want to say, thank you for your guys' willingness to look at this property. It's obviously, I'm a West Sider. I grew up on the South Side, but I live on the West Side. I drive by that vacant lot every day. It's nice to see that, there's some new growth that's going to occur within the community. Obviously, in that area, we've got a high density of apartments and condos and things like that. It fits with that area very well, and I'm excited to see, what the new development might be over there, but I'm just appreciative that, a new entity is investing in our area, so appreciate it.
All right, anyone else? All right, please take the roll on 2256.
Ford.
Aye.
Allison Osby.
Aye.
Crozy.
Aye.
Mugrower.
Aye.
Erickson.
Aye.
Peschel.
Aye. Aye.
Palmieri.
Aye.
Carried 7.
Next is ordinance 20-257, approve temporary closure of Oakwood Road at the railroad crossing. We did not have any comments on the rest of these items, right?
No, we
Okay.
did not.
Back to council for motion in a second.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Please take the roll.
Ford.
Aye.
Allison Osby.
Aye.
Crozy.
Aye.
Mugrower.
Aye.
Erickson.
Aye.
Peschel.
Aye.
Palmieri.
Aye.
Carried 7.
Item number 33, ordinance 20-258, approve zone change from business park district to business park with a planned development overlay district for 3 properties located at the northeast corner of Jackson Street and West Fernell Avenue. Plan Commission recommends approval. Council, motion and a second, please.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Please take the roll.
Ford.
Aye.
Allison Osby.
Aye.
Crozy.
Aye.
Mugrower.
Aye.
Erickson.
Aye.
Peschel.
Aye.
Palmieri.
Aye.
Carried 7.
Next is item number 34, ordinance 20-259, approve zone change from heavy industrial district to heavy industrial district with a planned development overlay at 191 West 28th Avenue. Plan Commission recommends approval. Council for a motion and a second.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Mr. Davis, is this the hydride chemical expansion of the rail yard?
Yes.
Can you just talk a little bit about what the purpose of that is?
Yes, Hydrate ships a lot of material in and out with rail cars, and they've identified the need for additional rail spurs, so they purchased additional land to create this yard for them, and will supply them with the adequate storage for all the rail cars that they would be needing.
So this has been in the works for several years and planned for several years?
I wouldn't say years, but a substantial amount of time. They've been working on this project for quite a long time. I couldn't say exactly when it started. It just became public just recently.
And would this allow them to transport more, less, or the same volume of some of these chlorine and other chemicals?
I don't know off the top of my head.
For some reason, I thought that I had read that this would increase that volume of
Certainly
those
by
items.
rail. I don't know if it supplants completely what they could ship via trucking.
And I guess I just had a question. Do we get like a list of what's being transported through the city? For some reason, I thought at one point that there was a difficulty in knowing what was being transported via the rail lines.
That I would have to look into. I believe there's some information that's shared, perhaps with the fire department, but I don't think that's something we typically get, at least in community development.
Anybody else? All right, thank you. Please call the roll.
Ford.
Aye.
Allison Osby.
Aye.
Krause.
Aye.
Mugrower.
Aye.
Erickson.
Aye.
Peschel.
Aye.
Palmieri.
Aye.
Carried 7.
All right, next is 20-60, approve zone change from institutional district to institutional district with a planned development overlay at 500 East County Road Y. Plan Commission recommends approval. Council for motion and a second.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. All right, no discussion. Please take the roll.
Ford.
Aye.
Allison Osby.
Aye.
Krause.
Aye.
Mugrower.
Aye.
Erickson.
Aye.
Peschel.
Aye.
Palmieri.
Aye.
Carried 7.
Next item is approve zone change from single-family residential 5 district to multifamily residential 12 district for properties located on the south side of the 2600 block of Witzel Avenue. Again, Plan Commission recommends approval.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? All right, please take the roll.
Ford.
Aye.
Allison Osby.
Aye.
Krause.
Aye.
Mugrower.
Aye.
Erickson.
Aye.
Peschel.
Aye.
Palmieri.
Aye.
Carried 7.
Next, we have new resolutions. 20-262, approve annual licenses.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. Any discussion? Please take the roll.
Ford.
Aye.
Allison Osby.
Aye.
Krause.
Aye.
Mugrower.
Aye.
Erickson.
Aye.
Peschel.
Aye.
Palmieri.
Aye.
Carried 7.
Next is Resolution 20-263, approve annual licenses for Beckett's and Wagner Market. Need a motion and a second on this?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion?
Mayor, may I?
Yes, please, Councilmember Peschel.
Sure. So this resolution has been put forward to provide me the opportunity to vote present just on these 2 licenses. These businesses are operated by family members of my family, some of my family. So, thank you.
All right, thank you. Please take the roll on 20-263.
Ford.
Aye.
Allison Osby.
Aye.
Krause.
Aye.
Mugrower.
Aye.
Erickson.
Aye.
Peschel.
Present.
Palmieri.
Aye.
Carried 6, 1 present.
Next is Resolution 20-264, approve agreement with Town of Oshkosh and a proposed sanitary and water service district in the area currently served by water through the state of Wisconsin through Winnebago Mental Health Institute. Do we have anyone registered on this item, Pam?
We have no further individuals.
No further?
Mm-mm.
Okay. Council for a motion and a second.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? City Manager or
Madam
City
Mayor,
Attorney?
I just wanted to note that you got a memo in your folders tonight. The town did approve the agreement at their meeting last night.
Last night?
Yes.
Okay. So Resolution 20-264, okay. The town, yes. I see that the town of Oshkosh approved the proposed agreement last evening at their town board. I guess, Mr. City Manager, would you just give a brief
Sure.
description of what this is?
This has been a project that has been on and off for probably 25 years, maybe even 30. And I got to give a lot of credit to City Attorney Lawrence and the Public Works staff for their patience in getting this through. Winnebago County Mental Health Institute has been served by city water and sewer for probably 70 years now. Prior to that, they had their own well and sewer. They wanted to be annexed to the city so they could get reliable water and sewer service. Years ago, they provided water and sewer service to the old homes immediately west of the Institute because they were normally like caretakers at the institution, so they provided the utility service. As those properties got sold off, WMHI was effectively providing water and sewer service to private individuals and was receiving nothing for it. And as a result of receiving nothing for it, they were not maintaining these lines, and it was becoming a dangerous situation, and it was costly for WMHI. Some people were starting to pay them, but others weren't. Effectively, what we're doing here is we've reached an agreement with the town of Oshkosh. They've received a grant that they will put in brand-new infrastructure to serve the residents that are in the town of Oshkosh. The town is creating a separate sanitary district. We will enter into an agreement with them to provide this service, and they'll basically get bulk rates like we do with other surrounding townships. Water is relatively new to this, but it was necessary for us to make this deal work. And it's been actively worked on for a couple of years because the state wanted to get out of providing the service. And the state held off on eliminating the service until the grant could get approved and we could negotiate this deal. And I say we, City Attorney Lawrence did that. So I want to acknowledge that because it's only 4 lines in the agenda, but it's been a lot of work. So happy to answer any questions if I haven't bored you already.
All right, please take the roll.
Ford,
Aye.
Allison Osby,
Aye.
Krause,
Aye.
Mugrower,
Aye.
Erickson,
Aye.
Peschel,
Aye.
Palmieri,
Aye.
carried 7.
So next is Resolution 20-265, approved general development plan and specific implementation plan for a rail yard expansion at 191 West 28th Avenue. This goes back to the same location, but this is the general development plan and the SIP. Plan Commission recommends approval. Need a motion and a second.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Please take the roll.
Ford,
Aye.
Allison Osby,
Aye.
Krause,
Aye.
Mugrower,
Aye.
Erickson,
Aye.
Peschel,
Aye.
Palmieri,
Aye.
carried 7.
Next is 20-266, approved general development plan for modification to the Sunnyview Expo Center at 500 East County Road Y. Plan Commission recommends approval as well.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. Please take the roll.
Ford,
Aye.
Allison Osby,
Aye.
Krause,
Aye.
Mugrower,
Aye.
Erickson,
Aye.
Peschel,
Aye.
Palmieri,
Aye.
carried 7.
And the last of the new resolutions, 20-267, approve renewal of the lease and operating agreement with the Grand Oshkosh, Inc. for the Grand Opera House 2020 through 2030. Do we have anyone registered to speak?
No, we do not.
All right, back to council for motion and a second.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. Councilmember Ellison Osby.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Perhaps either Mr. Urban or Mr. Roloff could maybe highlight, because I think I might be the dinosaur on the council that was here for the last lease agreement. So maybe perhaps just to summarize the changes of maybe perhaps what was to what this agreement is and the reason and rationale as to why it would go from a 5-year to 10-year. And I will say, in full disclosure, I had a very, very nice discussion with 2 of the board members. One of them is here this evening.
No, there are 2 behind that mask.
Oh, that's right. I didn't recognize with the math. So yes, had a very nice discussion. And so I just thought maybe perhaps there could be some education for those that are not a dinosaur like I am on the city council.
I'm going to be careful and not agree with that statement from the council member, so I don't get myself into trouble, but thank you. This agreement is being proposed to extend and provide a 10-year agreement, and I think if there are questions about the purpose of a 10-year agreement, I think it would be best if a member of the board could kind of give a little background to that, and there's members of the grand board here. But the idea behind it is to provide some comparability to the agreement we have between the city and the Best Western regarding the convention center, trying to mirror it as much as possible. The difference here is that unlike the convention center, which is funded directly through room tax dollars, which is created there, room tax dollars are used to fund this, but that's just a funding source that we've used. We provide a management, we supply the Grand with a management fee to operate the Grand, take care of programming and doing all the turnkey operations. It's been working successfully. The Grand has asked about perhaps increasing that amount, and the timing for that request was just about as terrible as you could ask because it is partially funded because it is funded with room tax dollars. This is going to be a very bad year for room tax dollars, and they've agreed to understand that that's not possible at this time. But we have a provision in there that as circumstances change, and it's triggered by a specific dollar amount, so we all know when it'll happen, or we know what will be needed to make it happen. I can't tell you when. The other provision in the contract that I think is important is the Grand had made a pledge when the roof was redone in 2010, and that was a very difficult time. I mean, the Grand took a huge operational hit because they were closed for 1.5 years. And they made a pledge, and they agreed to, they pledged $250,000, of which they have paid off all but about $100,000 of that pledge. They have made some improvements to the Grand, specifically the seating in the upper level, and that amounts to about $126,000. They would like to be credited for that so that their pledge is complete, and that's not deducted from their management fee. So that's probably the biggest request in here of everything. There are some other provisions in here regarding the duties and operations that Mr. Urban might be able to answer if you have any questions about those. But we tried to make it as comparable to the agreement with the convention center as we could. Did I cover everything, Counselor? I just want to make sure I did that. And certainly if you want to talk about the 10-year agreement, there's one other thing. The Grand is committed to doing some, getting some naming rights, and there's provisions in there for naming rights. And if they get sponsorships for naming rights, they're putting 1/4 of that into a fund at the Community Foundation, so that as capital projects come up before the council, that they can offer to provide some of those funds to offset the cost of those capital improvements. So it truly is a partnership that they're willing to put out there, and I think that's a great provision that has not existed in prior agreements.
Councilmember McGraw.
Nope, I think, sorry, I think that's, yes.
Oh, and I just wanted to add to City Manager Mark Roloff's point in regards to the seating, that the prior council, which I think perhaps, Mr. Krause, you might have been on, and I can't remember, Matt, if you were, but I think you may have been, was that the Grand had come to us and talked to us about doing something different regarding their seating, in which they would like to provide a VIP experience. And so it was, taking seats out and doing something a little bit different, which, again, would give a VIP experience. It would change the pricing structure, as well as be, I would say, fair enough to say, competitive with other venues, perhaps in the Fox Valley. And the council at that time unanimously agreed that that was a great strategy to try to do something different different in order to make the grand more appealing to those that, for ticket buyers, ticket holders, season ticket holders and such. So I just wanted to add that. And if there's any time that I would be glad that perhaps I wasn't on council was when the roof collapsed. So I was post roof collapsing. Thank goodness.
Councilmember Guerrero.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. No, I just wanted to say I appreciate the work that staff put into this with the Director Furlow and the board over there at the Grand. I'm happy to see a 10-year agreement. It's something that gives them, for those at home listening, still at this, coming on late hour, or watching on replay, it gives them some flexibility in terms of fundraising. It gives them some flexibility in terms of, like City Manager Roloff alluded to, maybe some naming rights, but also just programming as well. It allows for them to really get creative as well as, potentially save some money as well as generate some funds too. So those are all good things. And I'll shill for Joe a little bit. If you haven't had a chance to see a show at the Grand, it's a fantastic venue. It's intimate. Councilmember Allison Osby alluded to the VIP seating. A few extra bucks, but it's a great seat. Or on the floor, up close and personal. If you get a chance, take on a show when we're all back to a new normal, hopefully sooner rather than later. Taking a show over there and experience the Grand. It's a great asset to Oshkosh, and I'm thankful that we've got a long-term lease that can support them and keep that asset in good condition. So,
All right, then. Are we ready to call the question? All right. Please take the roll.
Ford.
Aye.
Allison Osby.
Aye.
Froese.
Aye.
Mugrower.
Aye.
Erickson.
Aye.
Peschel.
Aye.
Palmieri.
Aye.
Carried 7.
Very good. This brings us to, congratulations, 10 more years. This brings us to council discussion, direction to city manager and future agenda items. First of those is Block Party requests for 2020.
I'll be taking that one on tonight. I anticipated we would be about this hour when we got to it. Ms. Snell has written you a memo about block party requests. Council has the authority to grant block party requests. We do it at no cost to encourage these, but we're in a different year this year. And rather than start bringing block party requests to you, I thought it'd be appropriate to just bring up the topic here. I think you understand the pros and cons. Ms. Snell, I think, covered those issues. The pros are we continue to encourage neighborhood interaction and associations. 2020 isn't necessarily the year we want to do that, but the block parties are there and they'll likely continue. I don't want to make it out to be that our neighborhood groups are scofflaws, but they want to get together. Can they socially distance? Well, I did speak with Mr. Guerin at the health department. He would like to discourage these, but he understands that if the council wants to do this, that he would assist in providing information to the groups about how they can keep socially distanced. But it goes against their basic recommendation. So I told Mr. Guerin I would report that to you, that he's not thrilled about this, but he understands if you do it. So we're trying to do everything we can to get some feedback from council before we start bringing these forward. Because if you're not interested in them, we'll tell everybody now. But I suspect if I deliver the bad news, it will come back. They'll do an end run around me and come right to you.
Well, I appreciate that you brought it forward as a group before bringing them on individually. I think we all have some opinions here. I'll just say that I appreciate Kathy Snell, the staff report. One of the things that I do have a big question mark with is there was a statement made that there is no sponsor for these block parties. However, we've been spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on an entity that acts as a sponsor for some of our neighborhood associations and a number of those block parties as like a fiscal agent who reimburses them, and also may or may not be some kind of insurance coverage or whatever. And I feel really really torn on this because we've approved a lot of other events, And I think it would be very difficult to tell neighbors and neighborhood groups that they can't do this and coordinate their own social distancing with common sense. Now, maybe it doesn't make sense to have a bouncy house, right? Maybe there is some guidance and structure around what physical distancing looks like. Is it at the end of your driveway, or, you know, those kind of things? I'm not sure it's a black and white, cut and dried thing. So I think Councilmember Mugrauer wanted to weigh in on this.
Appreciate it, Madam Mayor. I'll start with, I fully support seeing these block party requests come across our table for approval. And here's why. And the mayor makes a good point towards the end of, not that all your points were good, the last one you were making.
Oh, my points are good. What are you talking about?
That I have to have faith, I have to have trust in people to make reasonable decisions in their neighborhoods. And I know that I say that in the face of the numbers that Chief Stanley shared with us earlier this evening that we see daily from the county health department. But while City Manager Roloff makes a comment that, you know, 2020 might not be the right year for this, I think there can be an argument made that 2020 might be the exact right year for this. That it might be time for neighbors to get back to know each other. And yes, you can do so in a distant fashion, a few extra feet. Instead of shoulder to shoulder, it may just be, you know, a few tables apart. But that this might be the time for people to get back to knowing their neighbors, to getting to know new people that have moved in. You know, the support that we provide does allow for that when we, you know, free barricades to block off streets. It gives neighbors the ability to be distant if they so choose. I know it's a simplistic way of looking at it, but I think it might just be the right time for people to re-engage with their neighbors and get to know a few extra people, and do so in as safe a fashion as possible. But it's not my job to tell them to stay home and not, you know, not socially responsibly engage with their neighbors. So I'd like to see as many requests as possible, and the mayor makes the point. We've approved special events permits since this whole thing started. We approved, while it didn't take place, we approved the beer gardens for Kelly's through all this without any discussion, without anything negative coming from that. Obviously, I know they couldn't have it, but we've approved other ones that would have been far more impactful negatively. So that's all I got.
Councilmember Ford.
Yeah, total agreement. Thinking my last final act is the Millers Bay Neighborhood Association was canceling basically everything on the docket because of COVID-19. And, right, that's hurt neighborhood continuity, neighborhood relationships. And we've been trusted to put on events safely, certainly other safety concerns, for a long time. And I think that we can release some guidance just like we have for the businesses in our community. And trust that they'll do the right thing, as Councilmember Mugrauer said.
Certainly, you know, perhaps there are some items that the, you know, Public Health Department may want to share about, you know, healthy and safer ways of doing that. I will share that before Pastor Butler left, but, you know, their church actually supports one of the larger ones that we see during National Night Out, and that is not an official neighborhood association. Their church does that, but he said that their church group decided that they would cancel. So that's what they needed to decide for them. And he said basically it's because we're huggy people. We can't trust ourselves not to hug each other. So yeah, I mean, I appreciate everybody, you know, giving their input, and I appreciate having the question asked.
Okay, I hear you, and I appreciate the feedback, and you'll be seeing them coming up, and we'll talk to the health department about some things. Maybe even the idea, as I was listening to something you said, Madam Mayor, you know, if we can say, don't do bouncy houses. I mean, something as simple as that. It's like jumping germs.
Probably not a good idea to share food and, you know.
Slides?
How about the dunk tank for us? What happened to that?
So lots of good ideas on what to have. I appreciate
Right.
that feedback.
The neighborhood
So-
associations have done some very good and unique and creative things. I have full faith that they can get creative again and reinvent the wheel a little bit in terms of how they interact, so.
Very good.
Next
Appreciate
is the remote meeting experience. Councilmember Peschel is going to share with us his vantage point from out there in virtual land. Oops.
So, thank you. First, I want to start off with a positive. Tonight's remote meeting experience was my best experience since I've had to do these meetings from home. And what I mean by that is that I could understand every single person in the room, other than the public speakers who were speaking right at the base of the camera here. So that's a positive. Mark, did you do something different for this meeting, or?
I'm the wrong person to ask, but for details, the answer is yes. The short answer is yes. But they did some other things to improve that experience. But when we only have one person, that's what I've been told is when the school board's doing it, because Councilor Peschel mentioned how it wasn't as problematic with the school board, but when everybody participates virtually, it's just easier. When it's only one person, that creates a little problem. But we tweaked some things, and I can't tell you what they are because I have no technical expertise in that area. But Jake's, I'm sure, could explain it to you as well. But we did a little something, Mr. Peschel, to improve that experience. And I think that's part of the reason that those little, that bar is going across the bottom of the screen, that it wasn't previously. So we have a few little bars below Bob's face, and I think it's because that's how we improve that experience for him.
So I really appreciate being able to fully understand everyone this evening. And not just all of you on the dais, but for the most part, all of the citizens that came in and spoke too. So wanted to start with a positive, but I kind of want to go into my critique a little bit. So though I'm not sure I have anything to critique about now that we've solved it. So it was really frustrating for me to be doing this, and I actually, let me preface, I actually intended to be in the meeting face-to-face with all of you today, and I had something come up that led me to believe that staying home was still the most appropriate thing to do. So so that's kind of why I'm not with you tonight. But I was going to come tonight counter to how I really felt about needing to be in a public place. That's not to say I don't go in public, because I do. But I was really struggling with not fully hearing everything you guys were saying, because there was a lag between you guys talking and me trying to understand it. So I felt I was having a very negative experience. Some reality, I felt that staff wasn't necessarily supportive of my concerns that I kept on expressing after a couple different meetings. It wasn't until I expressed that I was coming back to the meeting for two reasons. One, because I felt disconnected. And second, I felt that there was events going on in our city that I needed to be face-to-face with people for. So I guess my concern or thoughts is that I want to encourage any of you that if you feel that meeting in present isn't the way that you want to do it, there is a time to this is a time to discuss that. So it can work out. I know that we've all had some committee meetings that have been used on WebEx, and some are better than others. There's different platforms that are sufficient as well. But I guess I just want to put it out to you that if any of you feel like you really should be at home for these meetings, we can continue to have that conversation. If you guys don't, that's fine as well. I'm going to continue to practice in this method as long as I can. I feel much more comfortable with it now after tonight's experience. So that's all I have.
City Manager, I just had a question on that. So do staff members who are here for council members have the option of participating virtually also?
Nobody's made that request, but certainly we'd make it available if necessary.
Okay. Just
Quite honestly, it'd probably be, easier for them.
Sure.
I think somebody had asked me
Sure.
a question. The first person that should be here of staff is actually city clerk, because city clerk's here taking roll and stuff like that.
But would you feel comfortable doing that from a virtual experience? No? Okay. Sure.
So, so yes, the answer is yes, but their troopers are hanging around. So, thank you, Mr. Peschel. I'm not sure if there's any other thing else that council.
Does council have any interest in having that conversation anymore? Are you wanting to wait and see what case numbers do, or do you want to have that further conversation now?
I plan to come in.
Okay.
I think where we left it was it's all up to personal decisions at this point, that
Right.
your personal situation dictates what's best for you individually. I think that's where we had left it. And I think tonight's meeting was a great example of the importance, and I don't say this to knock or to be negative on Councilmember Peschel's choice to not be here this evening. I know he expressed that he had something that changed that led him to believe that was his best choice this evening, was to not be here. But to be able to interact, even if silently, even if I didn't say anything, but to be able to interact with the speakers here this evening, to not, if I was at home not seeing them, not feeling that in the room, it takes on a different impact, or it has a different impact, I think. And so being able to be in the room with those people that want to speak to us on not just emotionally charged issues like this one, and important issues like what we heard tonight, but even on some of the simpler ones, it's it is important too. So it's a struggle, it's a balancing act that everyone has to individually make. But tonight it was beneficial for me to be in front of, to see them and be in the room with those that chose to speak with us.
Well, I'll just keep checking in with you guys, kind of on my little outstanding issues, to see where you're at, as things change on a regular basis.
Thank you.
All right, so council member announcements and statements. Has anybody besides Plan Commission even met? Oh, rental housing, actually. Councilmember Erickson, would you like to report on rental housing? I think they had an emergency meeting last week.
Yes, yeah, so we met Wednesday of last week. So it was my first meeting as a council member. The one report that I want to give is we had some representatives from AdvoCap come and talk about the RAP program, which is the Wisconsin Rental Assistance Program, rolled out through the state through their CARES Act funding. So this funding, the AdvoCap received, it's about $890,000 to cover rental assistance across their 4 counties. It is to renters who have had their income impacted directly because of COVID. So residents who are at or below 80% of the county median income can apply. They can receive up to $1,000 per month, up to $3,000 total per household, which goes directly to their landlord for either rent or security deposit. And anyone who is interested in applying can call directly to AdvoCap's office to get on the wait list. It sounds like they have quite the lengthy wait list right now, over 400 people. And they just started being able to contact people yesterday. So it's likely that the money will run out pretty quick. So until that point, we'll have some more discussions on what the need is and what next steps have to look like. But that's the RAP program.
Okay.
Can I ask?
Deputy Mayor Krause.
Did you have a question?
I just, I had one
Yeah.
follow-up
Sorry.
question, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Obviously, the state of Wisconsin, issued some grant funds, AdvoCap's administering, like you mentioned. Did you mention, or do you know how much that 4-county area has to divide up? Like, basically, how much is available for Winnebago County, or
Yeah.
either total for the combined area they're servicing, or just us? Because obviously,
Isn't it like
400 people is already $40,000. That's it's
Right.
off the top of whatever
Mhm.
is gone, which
So-
is needed.
Yeah.
Just wondering how much is going to be left, and at which day this week it's gone.
Right. So they said that it's first come, first served. So it's not divvied up any particular way by county.
Right.
So it's just whoever from each county calls first and is on the wait list and qualifies.
Isn't it like 1.2 million?
Yep, so they got 1.2 million total. Some of that goes towards administration costs, and along with the funding for rent, they also are providing some counseling and mediation support too. So,
Appreciate it, thank you.
mhm.
Deputy Mayor Krause.
We had our first traffic review parking advisory meeting tonight before this. And we brought forward the proposal from the city for construction of 9th Ave from South Oakwood Road to Linden Oaks Drive. The city's proposing to increase from a road width of 20 feet to 48 curb face to curb face. The city's proposing constructing a typical urban cross-section street. This will include 2 5-foot bike lanes on both sides, a 12-foot travel lane in each direction, and a 14-center 2-way left turn lane. City's looking for a recommendation from the board. They had 3 proposals for us. We couldn't come to a consensus, and I made the proposal that we just bypass and send all 4. And there was a 4th suggestion from one of the board members to have two ways each way, similar to Jackson Street. And all 4 of the proposals are going to come to council for suggestion, because we couldn't come up with an agreement on which one to send to council. So that'll be coming in the future meeting. That's all I have.
Did you have anything?
Oh, yeah, mine's not
And
as
Plan
fun.
Commission?
It was, Plan Commission was pretty, it was mostly just reviewing the things that we voted on today. One issue that did come up, and that's come up a couple of times, and I said I'd bring, is that every time there's a new residential development or a new multifamily residential development or a change in ownership, a question comes up: is there a percentage of units in this building are there for low-income renters? What percentage of units in these buildings are accessible for the disabled? And the answer we always get from staff is that, well, that's, Marilyn, it's not in the ordinance, so we can tell you, but there's nothing we can do about that. And I said I would bring to this body just the view on the Plan Commission, or majority of the Plan Commission, that we talk about that or address it at some point.
And perhaps that's something DEI would like to weigh in on.
I'm done giving people work.
All right. Well, thanks, everybody. I just have a couple of things. So East Central Wisconsin Regional Planning Commission, they continue to have some steering committee meetings. They are still in a search for a new executive director. It's been, I think it's now going on 2 months. And they have an interim. And then, unfortunately, the Parks Department meeting for June 1st, or June, yeah, the first week of June was canceled. I do have a quarterly boards and commissions chair meeting coming up. We're going to meet all virtual, so we'll be the guinea pig to meet all virtual. There are some new appointments and new folks, and so there's that. Other than that, I guess we'd move on to outstanding issues, city manager announcements and statements.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. In the packet, some of the updates I just want to highlight for you. One is that the student busing agreement has been signed by the school district and the city. So Mr. Peschel may have some update on the private fundraising, how that's doing. That's due on 7/15. Because we moved the effective date to September 1, the deadline changed for the fundraising to the 15th of July, excuse me. The other report I have is a lot of nothing, to be honest with you. The status of missing election ballots. We did receive a letter that I provided in the Friday packet that was a lot of, thank you for your letter, we'll call you, don't call us. It's sent to the OIG, the Office of the Inspector General. I have, that's all I can tell you right now. I would say that Congressman Grothman's office contacted me after we sent them the council resolution. They asked me a status report. I shared the letter with them, and they're going to be following up because they feel it's got to get done. I told them my estimation is that we are missing 3,000 ballots that never got to our voters. That's my estimate. And that's based on statistical numbers that Ms. Ubrick has been following, and it's been tried and true for years that we get a 90% return rate when we send them out. We got less than 2/3, so I know there's something wrong. So Postal Service on that. Skipping to the similar topic, the mailing of the absentee ballots, I think maybe we didn't correctly or completely give you all the details on that. WEC is suggesting that if the city's doing the August ballots, when you send out that request, somebody can say, I would like to get absentee ballot for both August and November. And so if they were to do that, then they would automatically get their ballot for both the August and November. So they're saying, well, if you do that, if you just mail it out in August, well, then there's no need to do a November one. That's their argument. So why would we do it? Why would you even do it, city? So their logic was people can check it off with August. And because of that, they're saying, well, if you're doing it in August, then we don't need to do the November one. It's not like it's on your dime. They will cover 100% of the cost if it's November only, because we've done nothing that they can kind of piggyback on. But they're figuring if they can piggyback off of what we do in August, they don't need to mail it out for us.
Well, now, city manager, maybe I misunderstood something differently. I talked with Reed down at the Wisconsin Elections Commission, and it sounded a little bit different to me, that they would actually also go ahead with that November piece and also do the data entry, which would save a significant amount of time and expense for our staff. And that because there's such a maybe a smaller turnout piece on the August end of it, that, you know, it really might be worth doing because it would save, you know, some of those postage as well as the hours and hours of the data entry piece, which would then benefit us.
I guess I have not directly contacted WEC. City Clerk Ubrick has, and I think she can probably answer that.
When we
that better.
communicated with WEC, they encouraged that if we were going to be doing the mailing for August, then just piggyback the November election, and then all of that falls on my staff. Because the voters August is a very low turnout, and the voters get confused. They think that's the big election, and it's not. So they just encouraged us that if we're going to mail out for August, then we should list the November one, and then the responsibility is ours. But if we just go with November, then they would, like you said, they would handle all the data entry.
Yeah, I didn't get the sense when I was talking with them that it was an either or.
They encouraged us that if we're going to do the August, that we should make it simple for the voter, that have an August, a November, or both on that sheet to request the ballot, and then just do all the data entry at that point. Instead of, it's confusing for the voter that we just do August, and then the state's going to do November.
His question, I mean, if you do send both to those who request for the August, I don't see why, I mean, well, tell me, is there any reason why WEC wouldn't be able to do those who send the November ballots for those who didn't request both of them? And handle that? I guess that's where I'm confused.
Are you asking me if WEC would do August and November?
No, I'm asking
Oh.
you that, WEC, if their intended policy is to send absentee ballot applications to those who don't have one yet, those who request just an August ballot or those who don't request both the time of August, why would they not be able to send that in November and handle the processing for those who only wanted a ballot in November?
I think they're planning to do a blanket mailing.
For the entire state, yes.
Unless your municipality already has something in place. And then they would pull out our registered voters, is the way I understand it. from
Yeah,
that
that's
mailing.
not the way I
No.
understood
No?
it from
That's,
them.
I originally read that somewhere also.
Okay.
But then when we looked into it, that is not the case. So they just made the suggestion that if we're going to do the August one, that we list the November and do both.
So if they're already going to mail them, why do we have to have that as an option?
If, I'm sorry, what?
If they're already going to mail the application for the ballot already for November, why do they have to have that on the August as an option?
Well, another
To
way of
reduce
saying
the
is,
cost and
if
profit.
we didn't do August,
Mhm.
they would do everything that
Yeah.
the mayor described for November. They would do everything because they'd have to treat us just like they treat everybody else. But the fact that we're doing August just complicates it for them, and they're just like, well, if you're already doing it, we don't need to do it, so why don't you do it? I think
But
Councilmember Ford is saying, can they sort out people who already said, oh yeah, send me November, and then the people who didn't, they would still send it out? I have no idea if they could sort that way. I don't know if they have that capability.
I don't have that answer. I'd have to look,
Yeah,
check
and-
with WEC.
And I guess I know I spoke with City Manager Roloff about this before. it would be really nice when we're making this decision to have some written guidance from WEC or something that we can really react to. Because we all seem to be
Yeah,
hearing different things from different people.
Yeah, I
And
did
it's just hard to make a
get
wise
different
decision. And
information,
I've already made one unwise decision on this, so I'd like to avoid that.
I don't know who this Reed person is that you talked to, Mayor. I can only rely on what the city clerk had official contact with people she regularly talks to.
Yeah, we just talked to a different individual than Mr. Reed.
Yeah, and I don't-
And I know who
I don't-
Mr. Reed is.
Yeah, I don't think we're having like a difference of opinion. I think it's just maybe, you said they suggested,
Mhm.
they didn't require.
No, no.
Yeah, so.
And my
you need
feeling was
direction
because
from us.
August is such a low turnout, anywhere from 12 to 25%, that we just do the push for August for the voters to contact our office or go on WEC's My Vote and request their ballot. And then let WEC handle November. That was my suggestion. And if council doesn't wish to do that, then we'll move forward.
So you could specifically say, we're going to take care of August because we know you guys aren't doing this till after August. And you could say, but WEC, you do November.
More than likely, just to make it easier for the voter, we would list both elections on that application. It's just clearer. I mean, I think of myself, I'm already receiving items in the mail requesting application for a ballot for the November election. So for the voter, I feel it's clearer. If we're going to do it, then we do it for both elections. Or we don't do it for August and then let WEC do it for November.
Councilmember Riverhour.
Thank you. To get right to the point on it, is there any way, what's the way that we can alleviate our cost burden? The last option you just said, don't do August and let WEC handle November. That's the easiest way to resolve our cost burden of this, correct?
Correct.
Second least would be, you said something along the lines of we send our mailing out in August, or for the August one, we'd be sending it probably the next couple weeks, the next week or
Correct.
two probably.
Mhm.
So to Councilmember Ford's point, unfortunately, we don't have time. That she's processing or needs to be processing already so that they can hit the mail in probably about 10 days, 12 days is probably when they need to hit people's mailbox in terms of then getting it back to us. Hopefully USPS actually, moves that mail along. And then allows you then the time to process the actual applications. We're already past that point, if not right up against it.
Correct.
In all practicality. Okay.
But we did already vote on that.
We did.
And we would have had to have really brought that back for like reconsideration
If
now.
we had an inkling that you had an inkling to do something, we would just administratively hold off on implementing it. If you wanted to bring it back for another reconsideration, I hate to say it that way, but if you wanted to bring it back for another reconsideration, then we would just hold off administratively on implementing it.
It would have been nice to find a way to save $100,000, potentially $100,000 in taxpayer funding if we had exercised a little patience, I guess. So.
So what are you looking for here?
If you would like us to place something on the agenda, we would be happy to do that. Otherwise, we will proceed.
We'll move forward, right?
Councilmember Ford.
Well, I just like to fully understand the situation. I mean, the state's punishing us for being proactive. I guess I disagree with your characterization there, Mr. Mugrauer. To me, that's us thinking ahead. So we're not in a time crunch right now, 2 weeks. So I have a frustration with the state on that. But I guess to allude to what the city clerk had just said, or to go back to what the city clerk had just said, participation rates are so much lower for August. I mean, wouldn't the majority of people be requesting these ballot applications after the deadline to receive a ballot in the August election? And if that is the case, why would the WEC not commit to funding and processing those? That's where I'm struggling.
Okay. I can't answer that. Yeah. It's just the individual that we communicated with, that's what their suggestion was. If that we were going to mail the August one, then we should go ahead and include the November one.
And I apologize, I don't mean to put you on the spot. I had asked
No,
the city manager to
that's
roll off these questions. And
I think the issue is that it's not that they're saying it's not a punishment, it's more that if you're already doing this, just do this, add this other check in the system. I think Ms. Hubrig's concerned that if somebody says they got the first one for August, they think it's covering both elections, and then when we send another one out, they're going to write, from the state, they're going to write it off. I already did it with the city. So I think there's concern that people will bypass the November election, we'd actually get a lower turnout at the November election. I think that's the concern.
I hear what you're saying. That makes sense now that you're.
Isn't that, Pam? I mean, that's essentially what you're concerned about.
Yes, that you could potentially suppress by having two messengers.
Inadvertently suppress with overdoing it. I think that's.
And there's going to be more, the city's going to do it, the state's going to do it, and then you have the different organizations. Just like I mentioned, I already received one for the November, so.
So if you'd like us to put it on the agenda, we'll understand that, that you could still say no to it, and then we're going to scramble a little bit. But if we can hold off and then you change your decision, then we'll do it that way. But I certainly welcome any thoughts on that. If I don't hear anything, I'm just going to keep going. I got a set of good news if you want to ponder that a second. The bridge is open. The Oshkosh Avenue Bridge is open. So I get to take that off the list. So I'm very happy about that. Mr. Robbie gave us that information. I believe it opened this morning. So anyway, that's all I have under my outstanding issues. And I can fill you in on an update on the transportation utility fee. It's really more an update on Janesville's journey through the transportation utility fee. As we reported back to you several months ago, Janesville was anticipating going through an analysis of studying alternatives to special assessments, one of which includes, or I shouldn't say alternatives to special assessments, they were looking at alternatives for transportation funding. And they were looking at a traffic-based transportation utility fee. With the COVID emergency, they had done the RFP, they awarded the contract to a combination of, actually Ellers was one of them, the engineering firm that made the presentation to the ad hoc committee, R.A. Smith, and a law, I can't remember the law firm out of Madison, but it was a.
Boardman.
Boardman, okay. So there was a three, pronged approach. They had one organizational meeting and then COVID hit and they haven't done anything since. So the report that I had given you several months ago is they'll get the report by the end of June and we'll come back to you. The report is not coming at the end of June. So I'm just reporting that to you because you had asked, let us know when Janesville's done and then we'll talk about it. I don't know when Janesville's going to get done at this point. So I just report that back to you. So if you want to bring this back for further discussion, it's probably appropriate.
And I spoke with the president of the Janesville Council, and she said that it wasn't even on their radar. So as far as council went, it was on the staff's radar, but not council's as far as priority items.
Yeah. And I don't think it was special assessment. That's why I corrected myself. I think it was just
It was
more.
the trip generation
But it was
methodology.
transportation related, to give them more funds for transportation, but, so I think they were just getting ready for possibilities for the 2021 budget. But it's not happening anytime soon. So, you can ponder that, we can have future discussions, but obviously, that's not the news you were hoping for, but, when you're banking on somebody else doing that work, you're subject to them. And then,
City Attorney Lawrenson?
I actually have one thing to add. The city, I haven't even had a chance to talk to you about yet, but the league is working on their opinion on the legality of the transportation utility and expecting that to come out within the next couple of weeks.
Did you say next couple of weeks?
Yep.
Oh, okay. The League of Wisconsin Municipalities?
Yes.
Okay.
so we'll be providing that to you when we get it. Then I have a couple memos about some contracts that we've awarded, and that's all I have.
Councilmember Allison Osby.
Sure. I just was going to ask if perhaps staff or Mr. Roloff, if you could address maybe perhaps the next meeting or the meeting after regarding some of the things that we talked about regarding transitions and with the state, specifically transitional housing within our neighborhoods. And I think with COVID, probably it's put that on delay as well, but that was a conversation that we were obviously having at the start of the year. And you may not have any update at all, or maybe perhaps it's been put on the back burner, but perhaps maybe over the next 2 to 4 weeks. If there hasn't been contact, maybe somehow we could still progress on that, so that we're continuing that conversation.
Yeah, nothing's happened. I won't even give you an illusion.
No, that's okay.
It's
I
kind of just,
completely understand.
yeah.
But I do think it's something that is worth our time and attention, and so if somehow we could continue those discussions despite our challenges with COVID, that would be awesome.
And then I also had a request too. How soon will we see these most recent Polco results?
If I had Wi-Fi tonight, I have the answer. So I'm sorry.
Saved by the.
Oh,
Yeah.
it's in my email inbox, and I was like, I have the note here, but you caught me. I'm sorry. I can't get to my emails here.
Because didn't that close out today?
It's closing out tomorrow. So I
okay.
will provide you with the results about what people were suggesting. Overwhelmingly, though, rental assistance was one of them. And I can't remember the other one. I have the email. I will forward it to you. I apologize. I'll just forward it to all of council. It didn't get the greatest return in terms of numbers. I got to be honest. It was only about 77. So you're going to have to take that with a grain of salt. But overwhelmingly, the top two were transition or rental support, and I'll send you the other stuff. Thanks for catching me on that, Mayor.
All right. So we'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.